Welcome. We are reconvening into open session. Thank you all for being here. Disregard all the board members up here who are still getting settled. I'd like to announce the reportable action taken in closed session in regards to item 4A. The personnel summary was unanimously approved, and there's a copy in the back of the room. In regard to item 4C, the graduation waiver will be approved as part of the consent agenda. And finally, in regard to item 4D, the board discussed a confidential settlement of existing litigation in closed session and approved the agreement for OAH case number 2017081206 in the amount of $90,000. This was not a unanimous vote. The ayes were Trustee Ford, Trustee Lundgren, and Trustee Anderson. The nays were Trustee Futterman and Trustee Owens. That was a 3-2 vote. Okay, now may I have a motion to approve the agenda, including time limits?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We need discussion on this.
I would request some amendments to the agenda, in particular 16E and 16F. 16E relates to the change order for the architects as it relates to the restroom units. We do plan, sorry, this is change order regards architect. What we plan to do is to bring back at the next time the amended contract. This would then bind the architects to the amended contract. That was not included this time. So we would respectfully ask that that one be tabled into the next meeting. There would be no harm in the delay for that one. The other item is item F with regards to the 2 portable unit restrooms for construction as it relates to the enrollment growth for Redwood High School. We do have plans for those 2 restroom units. We ask that this be also tabled because we need a resolution to do a piggyback. The board's familiar with piggybacks. There's another district that has already solicited for this same item, and we want to piggyback on that. I think it's Fairfield Unified School District. So we would bring the piggyback as a resolution, followed by this approval at the next board meeting. So those are the 2 that we ask to be tabled.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So I think that we need to have another motion and a second because we've tabled 2 items. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda with items 16E and 16F tabled until October 24th?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, great. Now is the time for public comment on the consent agenda. Those are all items under number 17, items A through M. Is there any board member that wants to pull anything from the consent agenda to be discussed under trustee considerations? Oh, hold on. Public comment. I fast forwarded through that. Public comment on the consent agenda. I see a hand. Great. Sir, could you please approach the podium? You'll have 3 minutes, and Mr. Christensen's not here tonight, so it looks like we have a volunteer from the audience, Dr. Topier, to be our timekeeper. So typically we ask for you to limit your comment to 3 minutes, and Dr. Topier will help you manage your time. If you can tell us your name, that would be great.
Okay, so perfect. So my name is Ken Mayer, and I am a resident on Fern Lane, next to Drake High School on the southern side of it. And I am coming here specifically, I included an email to the board members and CC'd David on it as well. I'm requesting that that the issues of the change on how Drake High School is to manage their new athletic field and track be brought to the agenda so there can be some discussions on this new plan. Specifically, is that there is a large population within the 2 communities that surround Drake High School. One of them are the direct neighbors that are affected by the majority of stuff that happens on a daily basis at Drake High School. And then there is the whole other community that uses the facilities at Drake High School. And that would include whether or not that you're using the athletic field, the track, the pool, the school, whether or not that you're just somebody who's in a community who looks at their tax bill every year and says, oh, I'm paying for such and such for these bonds that come through when they go through. Whether or not it be a younger kid who is part of maybe the Ross Valley School District who will be an upcoming student at Drake High School. The bottom line is that there is a new policy that is specifically only driven at one item within this new list of things that you can do and that you can't do while at Drake High School. And a lot of them are associated with timeframes. Along with that is also associated with the timeframes are the days of when you can do something and the timeframes that affect that, the holidays. And it just seems to me that this new policy is very specific and only specific to the track and the athletic field. And there's a large population within the community that is totally against this new policy, and it looks like the policy is being driven by a couple people that are quite boisterous about opposing of certain things that happen at the school, and they're trying to resolve that. And so my request of the school board is to bring it up to, as an agenda item so the community can have an ability to talk about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So typically that kind of comment would be a little further down when we have public comments for items not on the agenda. That was a time for items on the consent agenda, but we let you go because we're glad that you came. So we will take your comments into consideration. Thank you. Are there any other comments, public comments on the consent agenda?
I have a comment on what Mr. Mayor's comment, but I'm going to wait until the end.
If you wouldn't mind, it's just like another 10 minutes, if you can wait for 10 minutes. Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other comments on consent agenda items? Okay. Okay. No, you're good. Thanks, Tara, Dr. Topier. Now,
I'm not sure if it belongs here, because I was going to speak about the need for facilities accessory, and I wasn't sure if it was on the agenda. So cleaning our cars, I can wait, but if I'm supposed to speak now, I'll speak.
yes, that is item 16G. So if you can wait, I don't know what your timing is, but that is an item on the agenda. So typically what happens in a meeting is when we address each trustee consideration, after the presentation, the board asks questions, and then we allow time for public comment for each item under public or trustee consideration. So that item G is supposed to come at about 8.
Okay, well, I don't have Vallejo.
Yeah, I think you live in Vallejo. Okay, can you hold your comment until this gentleman, I asked him to wait for another 10 minutes, and given the fact that you have to drive to Vallejo, I think we'll let you speak at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on the consent agenda? All right, so now is the time to approve the consent agenda. This is when I wonder if any board members want to pull anything off of the consent agenda for consideration. Chuck, you good with item 17C? I think there's an Apple product.
Ooh, I missed that. Pull that. And 17B, which I just have a quick question about.
B and C, 17B and C.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to add? Okay. Okay, given that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with items 17B and C removed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, great. Student trustee reports. You guys switched it up tonight. B, we'll start with you.
All right. So our first grading period went very well with 33 total students earning above 80% full credit.
Wow.
We have 19 students earning full credit, 100% credit. We are also hosting our award ceremony on Thursday during our ACE period, which is kind of like tutorial. And we're giving out academic awards as well as Habits of Mind awards, such as Collaboration and Teamwork awards, Creativity and Imagination, Critical Thinking, Problem Solving, Citizenship, and Kindness. So that will be happening on Thursday. Our back to school night was great. We had a great turnout from parents. Parents loved the way we had, or the way we laid it out with presentations from our staff, and then the rest of the time, kind of like a workshop period for the parents to ask questions and stuff like that. And on Wednesday, tomorrow, we're going to have College of Marin on campus talking to all of our seniors about how we're going to apply and all that, all the different programs. And one thing that's super special is in Peer Resource, we're now collecting money, food, and clothing for those affected by the fires up in Sonoma and Napa County. So that was pretty awesome. Everything's going well at San Andreas.
Can I ask you a question, B? What time
Yeah.
is the award ceremony on Thursday?
That will be during our ACE period. I can easily look at a schedule and tell you, but I don't have the schedule right now.
I can look it up too. ACE, the
Yeah,
ACE?
it's the ACE period. It'll
ACE.
say that too, ACE. ACE or advisory.
Okay, thank you. Maddie, would you like to go next?
So this is our first full year with our new wellness center. Wellness center has over 100 kids come in and out of it each day. Wellness center has been doing one-on-one presentations in 9th and 10th grade social studies classes. So these presentations are interactive presentations explaining to 9th and 10th graders sort of what wellness is about and why we have a wellness center, and giving them varying statistics about depression and things, and drinking and driving and other things like that. They've already had 24 of these presentations, and they're planning on doing more. Peer Resource doesn't have a teacher currently, so the wellness coordinators are helping teach the Peer Resource classes and giving people in Peer Resource support and helping them with information about sex ed and healthy relationships and binge drinking. We are going to have a breast cancer prevention event, which is our leadership is working with Zero Breast Cancer. Zero Breast Cancer will be bringing games to inform people about breast cancer, and leadership will be organizing donations. Wellness is also recruiting a wellness advisory. This will be a group of students that will help with community building and will be educated on health issues, and they will help advise wellness about what sort of topics are important to them and help organize school-wide events. Wellness has had 2 substance abuse presentations with the fall athletic captains. So these presentations are about how to prevent substance abuse. And the athletic captains were very interested in these presentations and have requested to have more. So we're going to have more workshops about substance abuse. And then there is also going to be a sexual health clinic, and the sign-up list is already full for that. So they have a waiting list to see if anyone decides not to do it. Wellness will continue to hold school-wide events and really work on outreach to include all of the Drake community.
Thank you, Maddie. Nina?
So our team program returned from their Sierra trip this past Friday. They had a great 2 weeks. Half of the program was led by team teacher Lenny Gucciardi, and the other half by team teacher Diana Goldberg. They took different routes. They both had a little cold weather, but an overall fantastic trip. Our Pathways students have started their internships, and their College of Marin classes are fully in swing. Earlier today, Temescal teacher Patchen Homitz took a group of about 20 students from the CEC, Pathways, and Independent Study programs to see a new film called The Long Shadow at the Lark Theater. which is a part of the Mill Valley Film Festival. And on Wednesday, Tamascal is piloting the PSAT on campus for all juniors, which will be really great for the juniors as our students can do it in school and at school and not on a weekend, which they're very excited about. And lastly, Tamascal student Rachel Shindelis won first prize in the Pacific Sun Summer of Love Youth Poster Contest. This was an opportunity for young people to communicate their hopes and concerns about the world, and she won a scholarship and a gift certificate for art supplies for Tamascal. We're very excited for her.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Sondheim is going to talk about this a little bit later, I think, but we had low attendance about a week and a half ago due to a shooting threat at our school. We have a leadership fundraiser that's going on. We're starting tomorrow for also raising clothes and money and cat food, dog food, every kind of thing for the people affected by the fires. One of our janitors and I think a few other staff has actually lost their homes, and so we're trying to raise money for them to get going again. Our drama program put on a production called Plan 9 last week, and this week they're putting on She Kills Monsters. Due to success last year, Hall's gonna have their graduation at Redwood a week before Redwood's graduation. The staff has been doing a lot of development around equity and racial consciousness, as well as instructional strategies to help fulfill goals of increased community and increased student achievements. And the fall athletes, a lot of the fall athletes have said that our new field is a lot cooler temperature-wise, so that's really nice. Thank you.
So TAM is having their PSAT on Saturday. We are having a book drive, and we're going to send it to Filipino schools. Well, as part of our homecoming week, since this year we're trying to have a fundraiser geared with homecoming, which is really cool. We're also going to try and raise money and send it to the fire in addition to the book drive, which I think is really cool. Last week we had our bike and walk to school day, which was a huge success. For our Powder Puff game, as part of homecoming week, which is not this week but next week, we are ordering new jerseys since our old jerseys are held together by duct tape. This Wednesday we are having a boba sale as a fundraiser for prom. Additionally, we just had our prom walkthrough, and our venue was so cool. We're doing it at the Academy of Sciences this year, and I'm very excited. We're having a Halloween blood drive on October 30th. And homecoming week, which is next week, we're gearing it off by we're going to have hall decorations on Saturday, this Saturday. Then we're going to have our spirit days, which are Monday's Jersey Day, Tuesday is Taurus Day, Wednesday is Twin Day, Thursday is our theme day, which is Decades, and Friday is Tam Spirit Day, which is also the day of the dance and the day of the rally. So we're going to have a very eventful Friday of next week. And that's all that's going on at TAM.
Wow. So the blood drive is, who does that? Is that who draws the blood?
Oh no, there are. Okay, there's a company that comes to get the blood
bank.
Yeah, it's a blood bank.
Okay,
It's not
good.
students.
All right. Just need it was a clarifying question.
Do they do it after dark?
Pennsylvania Health Clinic.
Vampires.
No, the reason it is on the 30th is that's just the day they assigned to come to TAM. So in leadership, we are gearing it towards Halloween because I think that it's really funny that the blood drive is the day before Halloween. So we're going to put up vampire posters being donate blood. It's going to be really great.
Good. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Trustee reports. Barbara, I'm going to start with you, right in the middle.
A lot going on. David and I attended the Schools for Sound Finance Fall Conference, and I would urge all of you, and I hope students will be able to participate in that. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I'd like to throw that out there. The information provided is pretty relevant and fascinating to keep up with the trends and legislation that affect us, but the numbers that affect us. And they also provide, with their program, all the districts that show up for that meeting, their stats are provided to us. So that includes things like compensation, et cetera, and those are worthwhile pieces of information for us to have at this point. Attended 2 days of, no, it wasn't 2 days, it was 2 days of the Equity Conference recently. I think we can all, it was remarkable in its effectiveness. The lesson plan was stellar and superb, but the proof of a good lesson plan is what happened to us as participants. And I can tell you that the 2 days was worth many, many years in my life. So I'm very encouraged by the work that we're doing in finally getting some of the equity work accomplished. And then there was a day that we spent at the negotiating table, very interesting, and glad that board members are now back to that process. Thank you.
Thank you. How about Chuck, next?
Okay, well, I've been gone for the 2 weeks. I was, the morning after the last board meeting, I left to go on the Team Sierra Wilderness trip, which was highly successful. Everybody finished. It was really cold. Temperatures in the low teens, consistently cold every night, colder than, any trip I'd been on when I was teaching. So it required a lot of fortitude on the part of the students. I failed to mention at the last meeting that, as part of this, that I availed myself of the flu shot clinic at Drake. Great idea of the district. They've been doing it for years. Keep all the teachers free of flu and not having to get substitutes. What was interesting was that it was done by Costco. So, and as usual.
Did you get a bulk discount?
Yeah, bulk discount. We got 8 shots. Syringes, and I used them all. So, as usual, JLAC isn't until tomorrow, but on the agenda is the Senate Bill 18, pupil attendance, the school finance bill, SB 751. That's our
Reserve cap.
reserve cap. And then some other stuff with new dyslexia guidelines from the California Department of Education, which should be interesting. So I will keep you posted at the next meeting. I went today with, Nina mentioned that the pathways and God, I can't get the acronyms, counseling enriched.
CEC?
CEC.
Yeah,
Can't you just stay with that?
The CEC classroom and the AP comp group to the movie at the Lark Theater, the Mill Valley Film Festival. Yeah, not going to win an Oscar. It was interesting. And anything else? The team program from their trip will have a slideshow on next Thursday on the 19th. So that's it for me.
Thank you.
I will be going to the blood drive.
Okay, all right. We're going to go with...
a long night.
I'm going to go with Leslie. We're alternating male, or female, male. Female, you're up next.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So, along with some of the other board members, I was fortunate to go to the Drake back-to-school night. That was within the last 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure.
San Andreas.
You're right.
Oh, there's that one.
It's San Andreas.
San Andreas.
Oh, boy. And I was so impressed. I've been to them before and been to the open house, and there is so much going on at that campus, and the energy was just so inspiring. So I love hearing about what's going on at your school, and I'll do everything I can to go to that honors awards presentation. But I just left so inspired and very proud that our district has a school of that caliber. So that was a highlight. And then I also attended the Beyond Diversity. It was called a workshop, and I just have to say, I was trying to think, how do I describe it tonight, and I just can't. And in fact, I have to tell you, it was one of those experiences where, I went home and wanted to talk to my son about it and talk to friends, and I would say, wow, I just went through this 2-day intensive experience where I really had my eyes opened about all the intrinsic bias that we all have, and just how much it really permeates everything we do. And my well-meaning friends would say, oh, I bet. And I'd say, no, you don't. And I can't put words to it. And I've already shared this with the administrators. I truly can say this really changed me. And it was very emotional, very enlightening, very inspiring, gave me hope. Everything all rolled together. And again, I'm very glad that this district is doing this. I've also in the past looked at it in a slightly different way. I looked at it in terms of the achievement gap, equity. Every student has a right to a good education and to fulfill their full potential. But this time around, given everything that's gone on locally as well as in our country, for the first time I really saw what value it brings for every single student to get this sort of information and instruction and awareness that'll help all of our white students go forward in life and live a fuller life, and hopefully it'll make a huge difference in our country as we move forward. So if anything, it's even more important in our district to have this sort of program. And I'm a changed person. And so thank you again. I'm so glad that we're doing it. And I'm glad Dr. Topier and Kim Stifler, thank you so much, and all of you, and Dr. Yoshihara for pushing this forward. So thank you. Oh, speaking of which, I just thought of this. This is just a request for a future board meeting. If we could maybe revisit the bus schedule from Marin City that go to Redwood. I'm not asking for solution, but if we could get information about maybe a ballpark, what it would cost for us to fund a small van or whatever it takes, just to have the information. And one reason for that is that as a board, we've often spoke of the fact that we don't want to make budget decisions piecemeal, from September through the end of the year, because you get to April and you realize, shoot, if I'd known this, I wouldn't have spent money on what I voted yes on back in October. And so by asking that question, I'm not suggesting we take an action, but it'd be good for us to get information like that when we can, in case we do find ourselves in the situation that we need to make that kind of decision if we can't make any progress with the Marin County Transit Authority. So I think it's really, really important. So thank you.
Michael.
Yes. So Barbara and David and I attended the Marin Community United Dinner, which is an annual dinner where the trustees from the school districts in Marin County get together with the elected officials at the county and the various city levels And that's always very interesting to hear what's going on with respect to the different towns. And the speaker was quite interesting. She had some really very dynamic in terms of dealing with sort of government services and being able to improve government services. It was not wholly relevant, I didn't think, to school districts, unfortunately, but it was a good opportunity to meet with city council members. I also attended the San Andreas Back to School Night. It was extremely well done, very well organized, very clear presentations from the teachers, from the staff. You really got a good sense of sort of the whole picture that the staff members as a group present to the students. And then I guess it was the following morning, I was at Redwood on the day after the shooting threat in the bathroom that Violet, you alluded to. And so I just went out that morning just to show a little support. And I can't say enough about sort of the fortitude of and the leadership shown by David and Dr. Yoshihara and just administration, teachers who were there. I saw Mr. Samet there out in front. Students who came, parents who came, who brought baked goods. I just thought it was and the coordination with the police department, who had an active presence on campus, and I made sure to thank them, for their presence. But it was a good day, frankly, to show strength and unity and commitment to the education and to, frankly, quote Tom Petty, we won't back down. So just kudos to everybody from the written communications just to, I understand why some parents decided that they didn't want to have their children go to school that day. There were risks associated with it. I'm glad that those risks proved to be unfounded, obviously. But I just want to thank everybody involved for their leadership. It was really a team effort. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak long. I have a laundry list of things that I did since the last meeting. I, too, attended the San Andreas Back to School Night. Can't wait to see Greg in the Storm mascot outfit. I'm lobbying for him to be the face of the new Storm at San Andreas. I was at the negotiating table with Barbara and TFT, and that's an interesting exercise. So we're going to be rotating trustees through that, and it'll be good for all of us to understand the process. I attended several athletic events, volleyball, tennis. I watched Ultimate Frisbee happening out on the South Lawn here at Redwood, and I'm just amazed at the skills that I see our students exhibiting and the great facilities that they're playing on. And then I, too, attended the Beyond Diversity workshop last week, the 2-day workshop, which was right here, and it was well worth the time and energy, and I think we're going to hear more about it, but it's helping me with my journey, my personal and professional journey, so thank you for that opportunity. Okay, so now is the time for the board president report, and I just wanted to further what Michael said. I wrote down a bunch of little notes, and everyone knows I take notes about what to say at this point, and I think instead I'm going to try to wing it, so I look up. One of the things that we as a board are charged with doing, two of our primary responsibilities are to create a supportive environment and provide community leadership. And the past 3 weeks, between when we had our first bomb threat, then we had shooting threat, we've had wildfires going on the last couple days that have affected over 40 of our district employees directly, and lots of indirect effects going on. We've had things happening at the national level and globally, and I'm just really proud to be part of this community. I think that we have shown shown that we persevere and are resilient, and in the face of all these other things that are going on, there's still wonderful teaching and learning happening in the classroom. It's happening in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that the TAM community makes our job as a board easier, because you just go out and do what you need to do. And these two things that we're supposed to do, which is create a supportive environment and provide community leadership, are much easier because you make it easy. So thank you for all of your efforts, and hopefully we won't have to demonstrate that we are resilient too many more times. Okay, so I am done with my board president's report.
Thank you, President Anderson. Just a couple of updates. I'm not going to repeat what's already said, but on September 30th, I, along with a core group of teachers from Tam High, got to hear our very own Aaron Pribble share his writing, if you haven't had a chance to read. Latest book called Teacherland. I know Miss Jaime was there as well, so it was a great afternoon. We got to hear how many of the stories in the book are based on real life experiences, not only at Tam High, but also in the district. And we got to witness what a great speaker Mr. Pribble is. On October 4th, I got to be part of the PD afternoon at Tam High School. Dr. Topier, I think Ms. Stifler, others were there that day. They were looking at equity. They started with some exercises through an equity lens, and then moved into 3 areas: AVID and AVID strategies, the English learner, and grading around the R1 grading period. This was led by excellent teachers and administrators, all done through the equity lens. And lastly, it's not worth underscoring the importance on October 5th and 6th when the district hosted, as you heard from 3 of our members, the Beyond Diversity training through the Marin County Office of Education. There were close to 60 people there, most of them from our district, but it was impressive with the many teacher leaders, administrators, and superintendents from other districts. We had superintendents from Sausalito, Marin City, and Reed Union School District there, along with their staff that day. And Bolinas, thank you. Bolinas, Stinson Beach was also there. For 2 days, we will continue to spread the word about the value of this training for all those in our district and throughout the community. We will host another training on November 27th and 28th, I believe it is, where we'll continue to build the capacity to talk about equity and race. And I do want to add a qualifier that even though I believe that is full, I think there are 50-something people from our district signed up. Don't hesitate to sign up. Contact Dr. Topier's office. We'll put you on a wait list, and that will help us consider whether we will offer an additional training for this. Also, in response to trustees' questions, we are looking at a sort of a parent-centered training for this. I've reached out to one of the Project Equity Group presenters who does work specifically for parents to see what that should look like. So we'll keep you posted. And we've already gone down the path for student training. I think Dr. Topier may talk about that as well, but there's a specific sort of training for students around race and diversity. So that's contract has already come to the board, I believe. Not yet, but we're working on that to bring a similar sort of training for our students at all our schools. So lots of work on equity. I'm excited about that. And next board meeting will be in 2 weeks on October 24th. Thank you. Oh, board communications, jump right in on that. You should have 3 items. Email from Ms. Figueroa, community member, dated 9/21, September 21st, regarding oil spills at Tam High School. Email from Mr. Meyer, community member, dated September 28th, regarding Drake Field update protocol. And then a monthly enrollment comparison dated October 4th.
Okay, now's the time for public comment for items not on the agenda, but we are going to have an exception for our Vallejo person. I just need to read something first, and then I'll invite you to come to the podium. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and provides this time for members of the audience to address the board on any school-related matter not on this agenda. The board can take no action at this time. Each speaker is requested to identify themselves prior to addressing the board and will be heard for up to 3 minutes. The presiding officer of the board shall determine, based on time constraints of the board, whether some time less than 3 minutes shall be allocated to individual speakers. And I think it looks like everyone should be given the full 3 minutes. If you have not filled out a little yellow card and would like to, this is something that we have instituted now for a couple of years, just so we get your name right in our minutes, and I can manage the time better, but it's not mandatory. So with that, I'd like our speaker, who is from Vallejo, to address the board. Even though it's for an item on the agenda, we will make an exception.
Hi, my name is Melissa Bowman. I'm the librarian at Tamalpais High School, and thank you for accommodating me and my schedule and my commute. I'm coming here to address the board to underscore the need for a facilities upgrade. I know that we're working on that, but I wanted to give you my perspective as the librarian because I have more of a broader view of what's going on at our campus. And you know, the more, as our numbers in enrollment go up, of course, we have the need for more teachers. And what this has created is where most of our teachers must share a classroom at best. And we have some teachers who go to several classrooms during their schedule. We have no teacher workroom or lounge in Wood Hall, so the library is kind of filling in. The workroom lounge that we used to have is now a science classroom. So the sink, so I have a little room with a sink, and now that's where people need to go to get their refreshments, is up in this little place. It's really just a glorified DVD room with a sink. But we have this hot and cold filtered water, which is necessary to, you know, keep our for our staff to take care of themselves. There's no longer a copier room, so now the library is hosting the copier, which, you know, which is an inconvenience for them because they don't have a private area in which to take care of their business. Teachers can't prep in their home classroom because it's used by another teacher when they're on their break. So I feel that our teachers should be able to expect a workspace and to be able to prep the room. That's going to lead to effective teaching and effective learning. Thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you, and thank you for staying. Have a safe drive home. Okay, I have another yellow card. Ms. Crisanti? I saw her. Oh, back. It's time, but you can go. Yeah, yes, please. That's okay. Just tell us your name and maybe spell it so we get it correct.
Yeah, my name is Scott Righthand, and I live on the 50-yard line of the Drake football field, right on it. And I just wanted to say a couple of words, but before I start, I'd like to say you guys are great. It's wonderful to sit and listen to fabulous students who really are deep into, you know, this, not only the scholastics, but their community and their schools. And the board also, nice job. I'm proud to live in Marin. And very proud to have lived on the 50-yard line of the Drake football field for the last 30 years. So that being said, this is all nothing but compliments to you two and to you all right now, because we've recently had some difficulties with situations on the Drake field. Mr. Christensen sent an email around that I presume everybody's read, you know, delineating all of the issues that he's seen there, and you all made a decision to limit access to the field between 9 p.m. at night and 6:30 in the morning on work days, and 5:30 p.m. to 7:45 on weekends, 7:45 in the morning on weekends. And frankly, it's working. And it's very effective. It's limiting field abuse at night when there's really no reason to be on the field. And it's made things much more livable for us. I just wanted to thank you all for the actions that you took. And again, I'm proud to live in Marin, and thanks for everything. Okay, take care.
Thank you. And your name, the last name is Righthand? Right hand. Okay, thank you. Do we have any other persons wishing to address the board for items that are not on the agenda? Okay.
My name is Eva Crisanti, and I have been pursuing this issue with regard to access to the pool at Tamalpais High School, which when I was a child was racially integrated and now has become so overpriced, and the whole endeavor has become such a moneymaker that it's priced out a lot of people. I wanted to bring a visual today, and I hope you can get this for your video. Do you have that registered? Okay, terrific. Now, I want to show you this picture. I think everyone can see this picture. And if you want to know what this is, these are Olympic swimmers. Okay, great. Come back here. These are Olympic swimmers. The woman here is Leah Neal, and she was recruited by my pool club in New York at Asphalt Green. She was recruited from Brooklyn along with a lot of other swimmers from East Harlem. And we sent her to the Olympics in a very short period of time. She's multiple Olympics, multiple medals. And of course, everyone should recognize Simone Manuel, who won the gold last year. Unfortunately, we can't have nice things like Olympic swimmers from Marin County, and that's unfortunately because we are restricting access to the pool only to people who can afford it. This is the advertisement for the summer swim camp, $295 a week. That's a 4-day week, and it's a half day. I looked at the tax returns for the Strawberry Seals, which gets the lion's share of the time at the Tam High Pool. They are by far your biggest client. $241,000, over $241,000 in membership revenues for 2015. Over $9,000 in volunteer opt-out fees, which is the fees charged to parents who cannot volunteer the requisite hours. So working parents are unfortunately out of the picture. And I think you know, when you look at this picture, I want to show this to you again, and there is quite a discrepancy between what this picture looks like, what the board looks like, and what the student trustees look like. And maybe that's something we should be thinking about when we consider issues of access and affordability. But Leah Neal's, thank you, Leah Neal's mother worked for the post office, and her father was a jazz musician. She's half Chinese and half African American, and none of the attention that is showered on the swimmers here was showered on her except by her coaches. It should not be required that parents volunteer. We are cutting out the demographic, working class kids who can really succeed in this field, and we're denying them scholarships. And also, I appreciate that, 5 to 10 times the drowning rates of white children. So let's get them in the pool.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any other comments, public comments for items not on the agenda?
I do, but I've exceeded my time.
Is it for a different item? A different concern, something?
I received a letter. I've tried very hard to get information since June from the district regarding how long this restriction of access for African American children and working class children has been going on. And I received a letter saying that my last request was simply a request which requires an agency to search an enormous volume of data for a quote-unquote needle in the haystack. I will be frank, no one I have spoken to believes that my simple request for information regarding access for African American children over the years is a needle in a haystack. It's a very important issue. We are surrounded by water here. There's no need to giggle, sir. This is an important subject.
Sorry.
It's really inappropriate, and it's unprofessional.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Crisanti, so I think, yep, so we've gotten your request. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time. Okay, are there any other members of the audience who would like to address the board for items not on the agenda? Yes.
I'm Ann Jaime. I'm a former parent of 2 Redwood graduates, one a competitive swimmer who swam all the way through
Are
his
you a
college
former
career.
parent or
I'm
a
I'm
former?
a current
Okay, I used to
parent
say
and
that all the
former
time,
student.
so I just
Thank you.
picked up on that.
Thank you. Barbara would have corrected me, actually, and a teacher at Redwood High School. And I've come to the board meetings for a lot of meetings, and I've listened to Mrs. Crisanti, and I appreciate her passion for this. I too think that diversity in the swim community is a desirable outcome, but I have participated as a parent in so many different swim programs. Both my children swam. One swam competitively with the Maroon Pirates and then for Redwood High School. The other swam rec league from the time she was 4 till the time she was 18. I've served as president of one of the rec league teams. I've been engaged and involved in this sport for more years than I care to count. And I can say that every single rec league team offers scholarships. So reach out. I also can say that as a person who grew up in Marin County and who remembers the days of open swim at a really reasonable cost, I can also attest to the fact that somewhere around the time of my freshman or sophomore year, Frankie Reeland was found floating at the bottom of the pool, and that is what ended open swim in the district. That a child losing his life because it was a free-for-all insanity was not worth that. That was a cost that was too high for the district to pay on every level. And that's really when the district stopped. It was like probably the late 70s when the district stopped offering open swim at their 3 high school pools and started restricting access, not on the basis of discrimination or wealth, but on the basis of safety. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Only one alternative. You block all access. Isn't there an opportunity to provide access and lessons at an affordable price? I think this is a false dichotomy she's presenting, with all due respect.
Yeah, okay, we are not, yeah.
Scholarships are very few and far between.
This is not part of the agenda tonight, so thank you. Thank you both for your comments. Okay. We are moving on to item 16, which is trustee considerations. Thank you, Dr. Topier, for your timekeeping. And you are on for report on goals.
Good evening, everyone. For the report on goals tonight, I was looking at the 3 buckets and thinking, I don't really know how to separate them. I don't know how to say this is equity or so. We're talking about the work that was done for professional learning tonight, which is equity focused, but I think that speaks to quality teaching as well and student wellness. So I want to speak to you about some of the professional learning events that we've had over the last 2 weeks that involved growing our capacity to engage in equity-based work. Last week, we had a site-based professional learning block of time. Each site conducted their own professional learning to suit the needs of their school and their staff. I'm going to quickly tell you what each site did. Tamascal did a deep dive into their student data using a specific equity lens. They unpacked the data as a tool to inform their instructional practices, specifically as it relates to achievement and opportunity gaps among their student groups. As we have said, when data show there is a consistent pattern, those data reflect on us, not the students. We like to say that's student data, but in fact, those data are ours, not the students. Drake had they're in their second year of working with Circle Up, an organization that provides professional learning and restorative practices, specifically grounded in equity. And on their learning day, they focused specifically on power, privilege, and people, which was similar to the Beyond Diversity when they make it local and immediate. And they'll be continuing that work with Circle Up as the year goes on. Redwood followed up their anti-bias training from the August Staff Development Day by reviewing student achievement data, looking at the need for equity work locally, and beginning racial consciousness work by having staff look at the agreements, compass, and equity terms from the Courageous Conversations book, which the Beyond Diversity training was based upon. TAM began their PD time with a focus on developing a growth mindset and applying it to their classrooms. The staff then attended a series of 3 workshops, all with an equity focus. The workshops were led by teachers and teacher leaders. The first workshop was on the purpose of R1 grades and what messages we want to send to our students, particularly those that are struggling at the end of R1, which is our first grading period. The second workshop shared effective strategies for supporting English language learners, and the third workshop was about AVID strategies. AVID is a new program in the district, and these strategies were targeted at specific content areas. The teachers shared how building WICR, which stands for Writing, Inquiry, Collaboration, Organization, and Reading, skills support student success in academic classes. San Andreas prepared for their model school visit, which is scheduled for October 24th and 25th. The process involved reviewing and discussing the 2017-18 goals and action steps. And the items that they discussed that directly addressed equity were improving outreach and communication with their families, including strategies that will have a positive impact on their African American and Latino families, improving and increasing student recognitions, academic and habits of mind related, so that they can ensure they're supporting students holistically, and expanding the use of culturally responsive pedagogical practices in all of their classrooms. They also looked at zones of comfort at their last staff meeting, which is an equity-based activity. Also last week, as we've heard from several people, we hosted the Beyond Diversity workshop that was facilitated by Dr. Lori Watson of the Pacific Education Group. The 2-day workshop provides attendees with a framework and tools to engage in difficult conversations about race. There were 63 attendees, and 35 of those were from our district. As I said, again, it's been repeated, the workshop will be repeated in November. And as of today, we had to cut off access to that workshop because we had 53 people signed up, and we posted that opportunity on Friday at 11 a.m. So we have a need. We have people that are interested in this. And I'd like to also say this is a credit to our staff, that this is a voluntary opportunity. They do not have to take it, but I get emails almost daily asking me, you know, when the next one is, if they can't make it, when can they? And I had several people inquire from the last workshop when they'll bring Beyond Diversity too. So all of those are, I think, a great reflection that we are providing opportunities that people are seeking. So just really quickly, yesterday we also had our second district department-led staff development day. The teacher leaders and admin liaisons from each department planned and facilitated the day, and each department incorporated some aspect of equity work into their day, which I think is, again, indicative of this being a truly collaborative effort across the district, that this is, teacher leaders, teachers really engaging in this work, because it's work that they want to engage in. And to Dr. Yoshihara mentioned the SOAR program, which is Students Organized Against Racism, and that is a program that we are hoping to bring to the district in the spring of this year.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Topie on these efforts? Thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it. I like that we lead off every meeting with a focus on our goals. So with that, we're going to move on to item B, which is the Next Generation Science Standards update with Kim Stifler and Todd Samet.
Hi. How's it going? Good, you? Good. Thank you. How are you doing tonight?
Great, thanks.
Good. How are you? Good. So we are happy to be here to give you an update on our work. We have been here multiple times trying to figure out and update you with our progress regarding how we are incorporating the new science standards into our district. For the last year and a half or so, well, for about a year, we had a team, the Science Task Force, that was tasked with developing a 3-course model that incorporated all these standards. We decided upon that model, and our first course, called Physics and the Universe, is going to be rolled out to 9th grade students in the fall to replace Integrated Science 1-2, which has been in our district for at least 2.5 decades. This is a big shift for us, and we're very excited about it. The teachers are really passionate, and it's a lot of time and a lot of work. In order to support the rollout of this course, we really wanted to make sure we took a systematic approach so that all students in the district were receiving the same outcomes of this learning. We, in response to many gentle, not so subtle requests from our science team, developed a lead teacher team to do course development, curriculum development, assessment development, instructional development, professional development to support this particular course. So we have Todd's our rep from Redwood, we have Mike Wing from Drake, we have Simon McBride from TAM, and then Paula Berry is our instructional coach. The four of them meet weekly to do all this fun stuff, and they had a 3 or so week intensive experience over the summer where they really dove into this work with some other science members. So I want ask Todd to be here. Thank you, Todd, because he's on the front lines and has been really, really heavily involved and influential in this to explain to you the progress of that team to date around this particular course. So here's Todd. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I gotta see what's next. All right. So here's the thing. I have a mug that I use to drink coffee out of that a student gave me a couple years ago, and apparently it was because I use this. There's a saying on the mug, and it's because apparently I use the saying a lot. And the saying is that fun is doing hard things well, right? Mm-hmm. So I forget where I picked that up, someplace. And so I'm very much hoping that at the end of this, it actually turns out to be fun. I'll tell you, it is very hard, and whether it's done well is something that, you know, everybody's going to have to make a decision on at some point, right? It also begs the question that what if it's really hard work, but it's not done well? Does that become like a little less fun, or if it's easy work done well or easy work done poorly, then where does that rank? But anyway, we're going to try to have some fun with this. So let me bring you up to date with what's going on. Last year, and I think you heard this, we talked to you guys in February-ish of last year. So just as a little reminder, we had a couple things going in parallel last year. One was the work of the Science Task Force, which had a couple of teachers, at least from each of the sites, admin representatives and so forth. That group determined the sequence of courses and the nature and structure of those courses. We came up with this 3-course model, a 9th grade course based on physics and earth science, a 10th grade course based on biology and earth science, and an 11th grade course based on chemistry and earth science. All students, all standards, and that we would start with this 3-course model from the California framework as our beginning point, but it would not necessarily, the course would not necessarily end up looking like that. And each of those courses it's not a physics course, it's not a biology course, it's not a chem course, because they are all heavily integrated with earth science, and earth science becomes the driving phenomenon in each course. That was the work of the Science Task Force last year, and quite honestly, that was a pretty heavy lift. And a pretty heavy lift given that 40 people from 5 different schools had to come on board with that, and we had unanimous, or pretty nearly unanimous agreement, at least nobody pushing back really hard on it, and I think that was in part because of the number of people that were involved in that decision-making process. So I think that part went pretty well. We offered in the summer and fall of 2016 a 2-day overview training, a kind of intensive training that just about everybody on the staff went through. And we offered a monthly 2-hour training session. We called it the Learning Cohort, had about 10 people participate in it, and to just go a little bit more deeply into the NGSS model. Which is this idea of instruction in 3 dimensions, not just 1 dimension. In 3 dimensions, it turns out it's harder to build than 1 dimension. 2 dimensions is harder to build than 1, and 3 is harder than 2. So there you go.
Todd? Todd, I have a question. I don't know that you can answer it per
sorry.
se, but what's the participation rate of some of our teachers in science have established kind of, if you will, reputations around the particular class that they have been teaching for a gazillion years. And I'm thinking of particularly in the senior teachers, for example, in
Sure.
physics. Will physics like that as a singleton, for example, be available in the senior year? The same way that we've had it in the past?
Yeah.
So that will be it would be like an elective?
Yeah. Becomes a second,
Like,
I mean,
becomes
exactly what it winds up looking like, I think is open to some, evolutionary
Okay.
process.
Okay.
But the idea right now is that, it stays in place. It's a more mathematically driven course. Probably becomes a slightly higher level course than it is now. Could be a more specialized course.
Huh.
Could be physics of renewable energy.
So-
There are
so-
a lot of different directions that could potentially go as a second level physics course.
Our science-oriented students then will have the options that they still think they have now, which is a 4-year commitment plus, in
Yes.
some cases.
Yes.
Right? So they'll still have that sense that they can do this for
Yep.
4 years
Yep.
or more.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the model, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, one other question. You said that physics, like, the second course would be like a second year course. Would that be the same thing for chemistry? So after my, like, 11th grade chem course?
No.
Okay,
No.
sorry.
There is an AP Chem course.
Yeah,
That would
but-
be a second year Chem
But
course.
would I have to take chem and earth science, chemistry, and then AP?
Yes. You take this course
Yeah.
and then AP.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That replaces the existing chemistry.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
Right?
I have another question as well. I know that some students take chemistry at College of Marin. Would we work with College of Marin to make sure they're also doing the earth science focused chemistry, or would those students be getting a slightly different chemistry education?
I don't know the answer to that.
Good question.
Do you know the answer to that? Nope.
Good question.
It's a good question, yeah, something to think about, for sure.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yep.
Will UC and CSU recognize the 9th grade course?
Yes,
Good question.
that's a D. Yep.
Good. That's good.
That's a change from their old model,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes.
But, yeah,
Significantly.
yeah.
Yes.
But they
That's
sort of have to with this new set of state standards. Well, I guess they don't have to. They don't have to do anything they don't want to do.
I don't
They,
understand.
no, I'm saying the UC can do whatever they want. They always have, right? But with the state moving to this model of sort of needing 3 years of science to meet the mandated standards, there isn't any way for that to happen without having a lab science course in the 9th grade, or it's very difficult to do it. And so UC has recognized that, they've communicated that they recognize that, and they are already accepting 9th grade courses in this format for D status, thank you, for D graduation requirements.
That's good.
Yep.
So we've got 3 years of lab science.
Correct.
On the A to G.
Correct. Yep. This is how we spent our summer vacation. This is part of it. Then this is probably more in the weeds than you want to know about, but just to give you a sense, we were earning our pay. So we started with the units as they were laid out in the science framework. I'll show you what that is in just a second. I'll show you how our course has evolved. PEs refer to performance expectations. Those are the standards statements that exist in the next generation science standards. And they are written as three-dimensional statements. Every statement says something that a student will do, and that includes a content aspect, an aspect of science practice, and includes one of 7 overarching themes or cross-cutting concepts that are woven through the entirety of the science curriculum.
Can you give an example of one?
not verbatim. I could take a stab at it.
It just helps to understand if we have, it helps me to understand. if there's-
Students will use, want to look one up? I have the app on, well, my phone's dead. I have the app on my phone. You can get an app for it on your phone for the next generation standard. Seriously. You know. Let me have her dig one up, and I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Okay? We took this series of units. The three-course model was written by a group of teachers from a group of professors from Cal State Northridge, experts in each of the disciplines, and they came up with a series of 3 courses: Chem in the Earth, Bio in the Earth, Physics in the Universe, and in each of those they built a series of units. What are you doing? I can do it on my computer, but.
Are we getting this on camera?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's fine. Okay, so this is a. Oops. Here we go. There we go. Okay. This is a high school performance expectation in physical science in the area of matter and interaction. Students who demonstrate understanding can refine the design of a chemical system by specifying a change in conditions that would produce increased amounts of products at equilibrium.
Increased amount of products at equilibrium.
So that's the content, right?
Around the dinner table, that just means my kids are talking more quickly.
The fact that they're designing a system is a science practice, and systems and system models is the cross-cutting concept. So that's an idea that permeates permeates at different places all of the units of instruction, and also connects ideas between the different classes, connects between units, connects between classes, and it connects between the concepts and the learner as well, right? That's actually sort of an important piece of it. Okay? We took their series of units. I'll show you what that looked like. We revised the storyline. We weren't really happy with the units. They seemed to start a little bit out of context. We revised to a storyline that models a curriculum called Big History that starts with the history of the universe and goes to the history of humans. It's actually a real interesting curriculum, whatever. And so our storyline over the course of this first year talks about origins of the universe, stars and the solar system, origins of the Earth and Earth systems, and then looks at how humans interact with those systems. And I'll show you what those units look like in a second. We took the performance expectations that were specified in the physics course and we reassigned them from the units that were in the curriculum framework to our model. That took a little bit of, that took a little creativity. That was actually kind of fun. And then we had to design a way to communicate that information, or to organize the information for our own thinking, but also to communicate with teachers and ultimately with students. So we devised a unit planning template, and we devised a planning template, and we wrote unit plans from that. The planning template's based on understanding by design, which we've been using in the district for a number of years, so it would be hopefully familiar. We also had to devise a new template for communicating lesson sequences. Lesson sequences are 1 to 3 week chunks of instruction that exist as a storyline within a particular unit. We devised a template. We revised the current model, but we built it into our own version. And then we began writing lesson sequences for our Unit 1. We still have 5 units to go, so we're working. And then we designed a new template for what we want our activities to look like that especially communicate to the students the 3 dimensions that they're going to be working in as they participate in these various activities, right? And we began to write 3-dimensional activities aligned with our lesson sequences, aligned to our units. And that's the team. Kim told you what that team looked like. Nice representation from across the district. Pretty good team. We didn't fight too much. We didn't. Yeah. The framework proposed a sequence of units that looks like this. Interesting units, but they don't really follow a particular storyline linked one to the other. And that was our problem with it. So our proposed sequence of units, for those of you with physics and earth science backgrounds, is this, which has a little bit more of a sequence to it, talking about how the universe originated, solar system and Earth. Once the Earth forms, what are the processes that drive its various systems, and then how humans make use of a variety of those processes as they exist on the planet. So we've got 6 units, and each of the units has a series of lesson sequences associated with it. These are the 6 lesson sequences associated with the first unit. See the color coding I did there? It's pretty good, huh? And then the first lesson sequence, the composition of the universe, has a series, in this case, of 6 activities. This is a little bit bigger than a normal sequence would be, but it's sort of the kickoff thing, and we have some stuff we have to do to get everybody up to speed. So we've got 6 units, and most of the units would probably have 5 lesson sequences as opposed to 6. So that's 30 lesson sequences. And each of the lesson sequences probably has, on average, about 5 activities associated with it. So that's 30 lesson sequences and about 150 activities to write, all linked together, all built into 3 dimensions. That's a lot to do. We're not going to get it done, but we'll get a good start on it. So.
Todd, here.
Yes.
Short over here. The implications are, for pedagogy, are pacing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we effectively, you won't know until you do it.
No, we won't.
Right?
That's right.
Materials?
Oh.
The cost of materials?
Yeah.
Organizing materials?
Oh, yeah.
Place to store all those materials?
Yeah, it's probably less of an issue.
Less of an issue. Okay.
Still an issue, but probably less. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is a change. And here's the thing. A bunch of this is stuff that we do.
Yeah.
It's not all brand new. The way it's organized, the way the instruction is organized is the big change. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
And some of it, the physics course is the biggest change because we're taking a bunch of curriculum that has traditionally been taught to 11th and 12th graders, and we're trying to teach it to 9th graders. So that's the biggest change of the 3, but all of them involve developing a sequence that looks like this, and most importantly, making sure that what's happening here in the actual work that the kids are doing is done in 3 dimensions.
Okay,
That's
some
the
more
tricky part.
questions. At what point are you going to be discussing how these units are going to work for ELL youngsters or youngsters for whom standard English may not be a fluency for them?
Nice.
And special ed students.
Sure.
That's going to be a...
Yeah, you teed me up.
Huh?
You teed me up. Put the
Oh.
ball right on the tee for me.
Okay, good. There we go. Boo-boo.
So in 2017 and 2018, that's now, we've reconfigured the Science Task Force. It's no longer a group that's organizing courses, basically, right? It's really a group that's advising and revising and providing input to the writing team. And the group has explicitly been built with the addition of some people that are more expert in physics than the people on the writing team, but more importantly, also has ELL and special ed representatives that are giving really good input into what we're doing. And we're including in our, as we go back here, in the lesson sequence activities, we're including, as we develop and as we can, suggestions to meet those needs, suggestions for how to address those needs as part of the teacher materials. Now, this isn't the materials you get from a publisher, it's materials from a group at teachers sitting around a table. But we're attempting to build that in where possible. At our staff day on yesterday, we had a presentation from the special ed department, presentation from the ELL department, and we're also working with Applied Tech to try to build in some computational thinking, which is one of the practices, and engineering, which is implicit in all of the practices. So, and again, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's going to look different, in 5 years than it's going to look next year. But we're pretty excited. So, here's the other stuff that's going on this year. So we've got this writing team that's continuing from our summer work. We have one more unit to design. We actually haven't done the 5th unit plan. We're working on the Unit 1 lesson sequences and activities. We're working on what assessments in 3 dimensions look like, which is a real sort of new field and idea. The woman that's been working with us from Stanford is actually going to Stanford with that purpose in mind. And so she's, we're spending the day with her in November, early November again. I'm actually going to a presentation she's doing at a conference in Sacramento this weekend. So we're trying to get up to speed on the assessment piece and what that's going to look like. And then we'll continue, as time permits, to build out our lesson sequences and activities for units 2 through 6, knowing that we aren't going to get all the way through that. The Science Task Force is providing feedback, and we did it. We met the first time. It was really useful and successful. I think that's going to be a really important part of the model. And then in terms of professional development, we got stuff going on both in our district meetings and our site meetings. And there is a learning cohort that starts up again next week. With the people that are self-identifying as the teachers that will probably be implementing next fall. And the idea of that is to review and revise units as they come out, really to get them up to speed to the point where they can effectively build 3-dimensional instruction. And then in the spring, the idea is that we'll get them busy writing the lesson sequences and activities that have not been developed by the writing team. That they'll be in a position to be able to do that, and do that using the same model that we're using. Do it in collaboration across the 3 schools, which is the really important part about this, to get things kind of set and equitable from the get-go.
I like how the acronym FUN, Physics in the Universe.
Oh, I hate that.
FUN.
I only did it because
Ties bad, but it's nice and circuitous. Fun is doing hard things well. I like the fun.
Doesn't work for me.
Fun.
That's
Fun
it.
is doing hard things well. It's all there.
That has apparently become the adopted acronym, so it's whatever.
It has a ring to it.
I can't have too much say on that.
Todd, I have a question.
Yeah.
So given the fact that we're going to be teaching many more students physics.
Yes.
Is there going to be new needs for equipment and other facilities?
It's almost like I paid these guys, you know? Because,
So the answer is yes, right? So one of the questions I have, are you guys communicating with the foundations to the extent that, right, I just wonder in terms of the timing of requests that are made of the foundations at the schools for grants, whether you guys are in sync with that calendar or not.
Well, we were hoping we'd be communicating with you guys first. Just saying. I'm going to get to that because when I talk about what comes next, that's part of it. But yeah, we have to be smart about how we look for the resources we need to build this out. And they do exist, so. This summer, there is already set aside? Yeah, for a week-long summer intensive for the people that will be implementing in 18 and 19. And we'll build that really according to their needs more than anything, but it will include some addition of content knowledge for people that are not really physics experts or science experts. But really with the focus on 3-dimensional strategies, and then continuing to build out lesson sequences and activities that have not been fully developed. That would be the goal of that week-long intensive. And based on funding, we kind of need to repeat the process for the next course. There should be some writing team representative across the district to be able to begin to build that course out so it gets built in a commonly understood fashion, right? Fall of 18, we're going to be implementing physics in the universe, but also writing biology in the earth. In fall of 2019, we're going to be implementing biology in the earth for the first time, but also writing chemistry in the earth. So it's kind of a 3-year sort of rolling implementation of this whole thing. And here's the future stuff, right? I think everybody's pretty excited about it, although they're starting to realize the amount of work involved as well, and it's a little daunting. But, you know, with a good systematic approach, right, we build a program that has consistency, that goes a long way towards establishing equity amongst the programs of the different schools. And one of the beauties of the next generation standards is it's a set of articulated standards K-12. And our feeder districts are implementing, they're starting to. And as we get our stuff built, we can have a good communication with them. We should see a better articulation going up and down. We should see a better articulation going up and down in our program, and importantly, across the programs in the district. I think that's a critical piece of it. To me, that's a critical piece of it. And hopefully we can continue to support some version of a lead teacher program so that we can continue to develop and provide professional development, write the curriculum, provide professional development, and make the rollout very successful and very consistent at all sites. And that includes, you know, equipment and supplies. Honestly, this part, I think, is more important than this part. That would be my recommendation. Both are important, but you know, you get the idea.
Wow.
Questions?
I have a question. At Drake, because we have 9th and 10th grade programs, so some of the 9th graders will have to be taking the biology and earth
Yes, right.
or as their freshman year. So will those two be independent, not build off of each other?
So that's a challenge that Drake always has with the way their blended programs work. The teachers are, as we're developing it, that doesn't seem like it's going to be a huge issue. There are always going to be some things that 10th graders will have seen that 9th graders won't have. The content won't be the same, but some of the practices and some of those cross-cutting concepts will be things that the 10th graders in the program will have seen in the context of their first discipline-based course. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so they'll be a little bit ahead, but the content doesn't specifically lead one from the other.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the courses are interestingly designed to be taught in any order. So, yes, we're well aware of that, and we'll work it out for Drake.
Great.
Yeah.
The way they're laid out in the framework, the order of the courses is not specified.
Okay.
And so it's something you attend to as you build it, as you build the curriculum. Is this going to be a 9th grade course or 11th grade course or 10th grade course? But the courses, there's nothing in the courses per se that says that, you know, all of a sudden the biology course is going to be something crazy because it's being taught in 9th grade. That's a doable piece. Yeah.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Because there's no specific order, does that mean that a student could theoretically double up and do like biology and earth science and chemistry and earth science like in the same year?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Eventually, though, we're looking at that as an option. Would definitely be an exception to the rule. The way that we've designed it is to have the 3 courses in sequential order, right?
Okay.
From the physics to the bio to the chem with the earth strand. There will be a possibility for some kids to have the option to double up. We're not ready for that yet. And again, that would be more of the exception than the rule of the model that we're.
Kim, can you speak into the mic? I'm getting gestures from our cameraman. Yeah.
Yes, there will be an option to double up at some point in the future.
Thank you.
So these are technically higher grade level classes being taught to lower grade?
No.
No?
No.
So this wouldn't have like, okay.
No.
I guess that answers it.
you can teach physics to third graders. I mean, it's a different physics than you teach to a 12th grader,
Right.
right? So
yeah, I see.
you're used to thinking of physics as an 11th, 12th grade course.
Right.
We're designing
being
it.
taught as a-
We're designing it to be taught to ninth graders. So the math level becomes different. The way we introduce concepts becomes somewhat different, right?
Yeah, because it would be a total.
But there are you know, around the country and around the world, there are lots of places where physics is taught as an earlier course, as a prerequisite course to biology or chemistry. Yeah. Yep.
Cal has a course called Physics for Poets, for poets that want to take physics, and it's kind of along those lines. It's
So does
Yes, I
Princeton.
mean-
So does Princeton, actually.
Really? Yeah,
Same
so-
course, yeah.
Yeah.
Physics for poets.
Are there textbooks for these subjects, or are you just going to go?
Not
for
yet.
it, or- okay. Are they going to be developed, or are you
Maybe.
just
There are.
One of the good things about the sequence that we chose is it's likely to be the most commonly adopted sequence in the state, which means that textbook companies and publishers will be aligning their books to this course sequence eventually and at some point. But, I mean, it took us a good 5 years to find the right books for math aligned to Common Core, because there was this, even though there's this lag time, and even though they existed with Common Core on the book, the teachers, when they got in there, were like, these aren't fully adapted yet at that level. So we'll find the right materials when we find the right materials, and we'll supplement until then.
And the good news on that is that the integrated science curriculum is not textbook heavy as it is. And with internet resources, outside readings, the textbook piece becomes less necessary. Nice to have, but less necessary.
When did the NGSS standards for the elementary grades start getting instituted, or have they?
Well, when the standards came out, they were a K through 12 standard set.
Yeah.
So they've always been available. And they were adopted in California in 2013, late 2013, start of 2014, adopted by the state board. So I don't know that it was rolled out in 2014 as a result of that. Most districts had to get up to speed on that. So I think the earliest district started implementing it was probably the 2015-16 school year.
Okay, would it be fair to assume then that students coming into the TAM district in the 9th grade in 2023
Yes.
will be better prepared than the students coming in 2018?
That's very true.
And how are you compensating for this lack of preparation?
I don't know. We got to get this going first.
Okay.
But that clearly is something that we need to look at coming down the line. We're going to be getting kids that have at least begun to have seen this. They won't be coming in a blank slate, I don't think. They'll have some experience with the practices and so forth. But you're right. As we move further and further along with the model, as it gets more deeply implemented, assuming that happens fully, right, in the K, in the K-8 world, we should be seeing kids coming in better prepared. Yep.
I have two questions. One has to do with something you said earlier about the training with some of the teachers. Some teachers have more of a background in the physical sciences versus the life sciences, and helping to bridge that gap. And then the fact that the Next Generation Science is a K through 12 program, initiative, I'm not sure what you refer to it as, but would it make any sense to team teach or even develop collaboration with a feeder school science teacher, like 8th grade teacher at Mill Valley Middle School, that would somehow work a little bit in the district if they were bringing the physics and we were bringing the biology? Or, I mean, how are you looking at how to actually train the staff in a way that really is workable, given that some people really don't have that background and it might take them time, but then somehow use appropriate resources? Or is that something you're not concerned about? Or
mean, the idea of teaming, we haven't really talked about that. It's kind of intriguing, actually. So, sure. 2 teachers per classroom. That's not inexpensive.
Well, I didn't mean at the same moment. I was saying someone
You were
comes
thinking
in.
something different.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking side
No,
by
but-
side, but just as a resource, if somehow
Yeah.
we could share resources with the feeder district for the stellar teacher that is great with physics that can come at the freshman year. I was just wondering how you're going to manage all this. It seems like a lot of material that you're combining, which is great. I think it's really great, but I just don't know how you do it with the teaching staff. But
Yeah.
it sounds like you. My other.
I think we're hopeful that our staff. I'm pretty confident that our staff can learn the physics necessary to teach ninth graders and the earth science necessary to teach ninth graders. And we do have experts on the staff. I'm not sure about a teaming thing with, we need to articulate with the feeder districts. I'm not sure about a teaming thing
That would
with
be
them.
a little
But I
cumbersome.
think we do have expertise, interesting sets of expertise on staff where a teaming approach
Right.
could be pretty useful.
Mhm.
And so we need to look at that, even if it's just a teaming approach in professional development, right? Yeah,
Interesting.
but that's part of what we need to attend to, is getting people prepared in areas that they're not used to teaching in. We went through that 25 years ago when we adopted integrated science, because now people are having to do some science that they had not traditionally taught in a discipline-based model.
No, thank you. My second question, and part of it's a comment that I'm sure you've heard, that parents that sometimes have come to meetings and we hear from, and I'm a parent, not a former parent, but I'm a parent of a student that's a senior, and the integrated science, it was great in that it was broad. But then there was concern that kids were doubling up an awful lot because they wanted to take more of the biology and the physics and the chemistry. And so integrated science has somewhat of that reputation of being a curriculum that maybe we took 2 years, and although it has value, there's a perception that it wasn't where students would stop. That was a springboard to do other science. And so when we say that we're replacing integrated science for 2 years with now 3 years, I think what people are hearing is, my kid is now going to have integrated science for 3 years, rather than hearing the curriculum really is in very depth. They're going to get more curriculum. And actually, something you said early on in your presentation, that possibly the physics that we offer in the future that they could take when they're a senior, potentially a junior, that's AP physics, might be more specialized. It might be an opportunity to make it more specialized. And I think that's a really important message for the parents to know, that we might have to up the rigor of even some of our upper division classes as a result of this program, rather than this is taking the place of IS 1 and 2. Because every time I've heard you describe this, it's very exciting. It's really the way science is. You start finding out how everything's related, and it's really great that, and I think there's so much opportunity. It is very exciting. But I think it's might be still a hard sell for some of the parents, and it'd be very, I really look forward to getting more information from you so we can do the appropriate messaging so everyone's really clear that this is not diluting any curriculum by any means. Anything we can do to help. It's very interesting. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. I have to be honest, one of your slides, I think the former teachers here probably understood, but I understood some of this stuff, but you got into some concepts that I thought I'll have to ask you another time. Because I could tell it was teaching, approach to teaching, and I didn't want to you to have to give me a lesson in that during the board meeting. But it was very impressive. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else?
I see you two leaning in down there. I saw Michael leaning in first.
I have a short question, I think. So I want to ask you a question about the course sequence, right? In particular, I've had this question from parents. So when I get a question from a parent that says, why are we starting with physics in the 9th grade? What's the answer? What's a good answer to that?
Well, it's the foundational science of the universe. So, there you go. Beyond that. Yeah, we talked about this, how they did the old model was biochem physics and how that got established.
Go ahead.
By alphabetical order.
Carnegie
Seriously.
Commission.
What's that?
It was the Carnegie Commission.
Yeah, in the
They couldn't decide.
1890s, they couldn't decide. They got bio professors, chem professors, physics
Yeah.
professors in the same room.
1925.
Everybody thought that their course should be the last one because it was the most important, right? And they couldn't figure it out, so they said alphabetical order, and that lasted through the 1990s, in some places still today. So there's nothing magical about that sequence. Here's what we thought. There were a couple things that drove our decision in this way. The integration of earth science into physics provides a number of really interesting phenomenon, context around which to organize curriculum, and we thought that was particularly engaging for ninth graders, as opposed to the phenomenon that you would come up with in a chem course to start, or even a bio course to start. We also thought that in ninth grade, kids' mathematical differences are not as magnified as they are in 11th or 12th grade. And so we think we can capture kids with sort of a smaller range of skill sets in math and use the math in the context of physics, of a ninth grade physics course, an algebra-based physics course, and have that as a way to actually have them up their math skills, learn math skills in context and application of math skills. We thought that was another compelling argument for doing the physics course first. So it's the ability to integrate interesting phenomenon from the earth science, and it's the ability to use physics as a teaching tool to up mathematics skills and mathematics in context. Those are the two reasons. And something had to go first.
I have to say that's what I'm most excited about. I think we're going to get more students excited about science and math by starting with physics. And you can do it without high math, and it's so practical and fun.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
And remember, the standards include all of the science practices, the 8 science practices, have a companion practice that is not based on science but based on engineering, so the application of science, right? And it's our intention to build that in where we can and as we can, and we think that's another compelling set of ideas and concepts to attract ninth graders, a different group of ninth graders that haven't had the opportunity to do that kind of science at that early age. So that's the reason for physics first.
Physics is more fun, it's more hands-on.
I-
It just is.
It's really fun.
You
I
know,
think so, too.
I mean, I spent
Yeah.
my whole teaching career cursing the Carnegie Commission
Yeah.
for
Putting
turning,
it- putting it
for
last,
turning
yeah.
that around.
Yeah.
On a kind of broader scale, though, I've been tempted for the last, year and a half, when this comes to a vote to implement, to just vote no as a protest vote, but, it would, A, it would be insulting to all the good work you've done, and B, I would be saying no to physics in the ninth grade, that I've always wanted. But I think, as a district, we need to keep an eye on all the required courses we have for graduation. And now we're adding another year of required courses, which makes it harder for students to do 4 years of drama, makes it harder to do 4 years of art. It makes it harder to do electives. And some of those courses are what keeps our students engaged in school. And, this makes it harder. And I think we really ought to, keep an eye on, or think about eliminating some other things that are required for graduation. So that, that's my little diatribe on that. I feel very strongly about that. God, I had another thought, now it just gone. I'll think of it in a minute. But I really like this.
Yeah, I do too.
I really.
I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a good answer for you on the other one.
I hate integrated science. And I'm not saying it's the only motivation, but one of the motivations in the creation of integrated science was the science teachers who hated teaching science in the community, the sweat hog class. And for some of the science teachers, that was a really strong motivating factor, to move out of the biology, chemistry, physics sequence, because we had all these kids, they couldn't do chemistry, so they put them into science in the community, which was just horrible. But we need to think about those students, who back then were unable to go from biology to chemistry, and how we keep those students in a 3-year science program. And I'm sure you have, all this thought that's gone into it, but that's a big consideration.
Absolutely.
It's a big ask of those students.
Any other questions from the board? It's been a healthy conversation. I just want to thank you for all your efforts, and Kim, if you can pass on our appreciation to the full team. It's so much work and more work to come, but all for a really good cause. I'm thrilled with the articulation element and integrating math and science. It's all really great. So thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing and for your time tonight. I know you have class tomorrow, so appreciate that.
Oh, one last thought on science and community. I'm not going to say that Dave Lapp has influenced Grover Norquist, but I specifically remember about 25 years ago Dave Lapp saying they need to take science in the community, put it in a bathtub and drown it.
Okay, on that note, do we have any
I have no
public
comment.
Do we have any public comment? I think Chuck's comments might cover the whole room, but any public comment on next generation science standards? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Salmon.
Thank you very, very much.
Ms. Stifler. Okay. Next up, we're going to hear from Mr. Sondheim about our safety plan protocols, and Ms. Topier.
Hi, everybody, again. Thank you. So we were asked to come and sort of give a combination of sort of a debrief of the goings-on. As has been mentioned earlier today, it has been a challenging opening to the school year, particularly at Redwood, and we just wanted to sort of inform the board and the larger public sort of what happens behind the scenes when these things go on, and particularly what's important for us is what we learn in the process of these unfortunate events happening. So I'm going to speak a little bit to the district piece, and David is obviously here to speak to the more specific piece. So how do we respond? So our driving question. To say that we wish we never had to is, hopefully understood. But the district does have a safety plan that outlines protocols for responding to all types of threats. It is a physical binder, because as we know, electronics can go down. And each site has this physical binder, and it literally goes through various types of threats that can occur, and it has a protocol for each of those. One of the things that we talked about a little bit later too is, having to keep up with protocols, because they do change. As we learn as on a national level, and we learn more as things occur, we have different responses. But we do have 3 key response actions, and those are evacuation, lockdown, and shelter in place. And as it said, the responses depend on the details and severity of the threat, and it is crucial. Our partnership with law enforcement is really kind of what determines how we respond and which choice we make. They're experts in these things. We're experts in kids. They're experts in threats. And so we come together and we literally brainstorm, often many of us crowded into a small office, really thinking about like what is the threat and what is the safest, calmest way for us to address the kids. That is always sort of the conversation that happens in that room. And I've gotten to know many policemen over the last couple of weeks. They're lovely. So we'll go through a little bit more, what scenarios these come into, but I think we know basically when we do each. So, everything has a goal, and the goal always is student and staff safety. So that is, again, the driving sort of question, the driving force of any decision any and every decision that's made along the way. So you make an initial decision, and then subsequent decisions are all predicated further upon what is going to continue to keep students and staff safest as we move forward through whatever sequence of events may be unfolding. And again, it goes without saying, we take every threat very seriously because we have to. You just really can't know. And we rely on our law enforcement with their expertise, but even they would say it's not a risk that you can take. Okay, so lesson learned over time. David's going to step in and talk a little bit about some of the specifics that happened recently at Redwood.
Good evening. Sorry, this is a little small there. But we learned a lot of lessons. I think it's important to note that this doesn't happen, generally speaking, frequently, for either the police or for us. And so it's really, knock on wood, it's really important to take those lessons, learn, and try and preserve them for the next time, because it may be a year, it may be 2 years, or even longer. They learn every time, and I actually think the police model is very good. They debrief a tremendous amount of what they do, and it's been helpful for us, both as partners and also just for our own process to get input. I really want to thank our parents, our students, our staff. When we got done with our bomb threat, which was the first of these incidents, we put out a Google form requesting input from our students, from our staff, from our parents in terms of what did they see, what did they notice. In the past, we can go back 3 years ago, we had a lockdown. We did that in the form of kind of a staff meeting and got lots of good input there. In fact, I would argue that one of the reasons things went as smoothly during our bomb threat and our lockdown this time as they did is because of the input we got 3 years ago. And again, we had over 500 parents responded, 300 students, and many of our staff, well over half of our staff, responded as well. And I'm still going through those. So while I have lessons to share with you here, that's also ongoing. And we just finished this morning a meeting with Central Marin Police, Wes Cedros from the district, Sam, who's in charge of our safety, and myself. And we actually had a parent. We have a parent in our community who is the chief at San Francisco General, who also was the head of emergency in Colorado during Columbine and the Aurora Theater accidents, and events, and he was in our meeting, which was great, both as a parent view as well as an expert on the medical side. And just even today, we learned some things that were helpful for us. Specifically with the bomb threat, and we broke these up into two, but you'll see there's a bit of overlap. A couple things. I don't need to tell, I don't think any of you, that our dismissal procedure, once we evacuate everybody to the field, our dismissal procedure we found was both antiquated, ineffective, and in need of a change. And that we've been able to do. We'll talk about that shortly. We learned that communication, and we learned this with the lockdown 3 years ago. By the time we were getting communication out 3 years ago, everybody knew already, only they knew the story of a lot of scared and concerned students who were texting away while we were figuring out how to communicate. This time, we were much more able to communicate with staff, students, and parents to let them know what's going on. And it is critical at this point. Literally 5 to 10 minutes into it, we're getting press calls. We're getting information from parents. We're getting all sorts of input, which really connects to the next one, which is it's critical to have someone available to deal with the press. Whereas I can sit and craft a reasonable response to the press in a normal situation in the middle of managing all sorts of staff, students, all the emotions, the police, interacting with the police, whatever is actually going on, the message is probably not nearly as good. The help we got in that regard from Tara, from Wes Cedros, Dr. Yoshihara working with the press along with the chief of police that showed up on campus made a huge difference. And I don't know if you recall, we purchased after our lockdown 3 years ago emergency buckets that are filled with all sorts of things and are available as toilet facilities if needed. I can only say thank you to everybody in our district and you guys for this time, because that was an hour 3 years ago. This time some of the students were in classes for 2 to 2.5 hours, and they were used a number of times, and that went very smoothly, certainly compared to 3 years ago. They really, sort of a simple, it's a great example of a simple fix to a fairly complex problem. It's also, although it's obvious, needing to be prepared ahead of time with your supplies and then assume a loss of electricity. We didn't lose electricity in either of these, but you need to. If we're talking an earthquake, if we're talking fire, even cell phone reception can be flooded and inundated. And it's also, we also learned, and I need to tell you, and I'm going to tell you when I do the thank yous at the end, our staff was unbelievable. Even as some students and staff were in their rooms between an hour and 2.5 hours before they got to the football field, which wasn't necessarily the greatest place in the world either, although it's a lot better than a classroom in these situations, they were basically positive, still smiling, and that is a testament to me of our staff and how they did really under extremely tough conditions. That they could keep our students at that kind of place was truly unbelievable. But reviewing responsibilities, I think of us as we are, every staff member knows that in an emergency we are responsible for the safety above all else, and we may be asked and required to stay for up to days here on campus. But nobody goes into teaching because of that. And when you go into fire work and when you go into police work, that's what you're thinking in some form. And so even though staff knows that, they don't necessarily think about it day to day. And all of a sudden, when the reality is right there, they have family to worry about, they have their own emotions, their own history. Again, they came here to teach. They didn't come here to be emergency service workers. And so it's important to review that responsibility regularly over time too, just so it's not a shock when all of a sudden it becomes reality. With our shooting threat, which was a week later, we had, again, frequent communication. And I would even say, and our communication got even better then, in cooperation with law enforcement, helped manage parent anxiety. So we had school going on, so it wasn't the same as an emergency. But just sending out communication during that day, letting parents know what was going on and that things were okay. I received hundreds of emails last Friday, was it last Friday? 2 Fridays ago, thanking me for all the communication we sent during the day, because it helped them know whether they had their kid in school. Certainly for them, they wanted to know everything was okay. And even for those who were kept their kids at home, it helped them know that things were okay. Immediate replenishment of room supplies after the first event. So we had a concern that after we had the bomb threat, we might see something that looked, whether it's a copycat or something. And we, as you can tell from the first column, we wanted to change our dismissal procedure, which involved actually a significant amount of paperwork and getting it all out to the teachers. Have emergency packets. So when we got the shooting threat on Thursday, we were about a third of the way through distributing all that new material. And so our assistant principals and Dina Kraft, our assistant principal secretary, stayed till 8:30 that night, going room to room to make sure that every single emergency packet was prepared in case we actually had to evacuate on Friday. But it is important that right after you have one, as much as you want to just finally, fall asleep and get some rest, you need to look at, are you ready for the one that's coming next? Because you've used up whatever kind of supplies. I mean, we didn't even have to break into things like water and food and et cetera, but they need to be ready for the next time. And I'm really glad we did, even though we didn't need them, thank goodness. Immediate update of dismissal protocol after the first event was important. Our district office staff, I cannot tell you how wonderful it is being on the site where the district office is. Drake and Tam aren't here, good. No, it really is huge. Within minutes, we have Dr. Yoshihara, we have Tara Topier, we have Wes Cedros, we have Kim Stifler. We're sending Dr. Topier and Kim Stifler into the building with police, going room by room and dogs to go check all this out. Dr. Yoshihara is helping take care of the press that are there. And as we have reviewed and put in place new protocols, what we see is we have staff that will cover it, but it's not uncommon for us to have somebody who's absent. As soon as somebody is absent, we have a hole in our system. And so knowing that the district office staff is there and can help, along with our teachers who may not be teaching a certain period, et cetera, when an event occurs, it makes a huge difference. It also, as a principal, it provides knowledgeable people to bounce ideas off of, check thinking, because in the middle of going through this, it's not easy to make those snap decisions. And some of them are important, and some of them have to be made within minutes or seconds of finding stuff out. And so I can't thank them enough either. And it's important to remember about emotions. We don't go through it often enough to remember that it's not just our students or their parents who might be scared at home and don't know all the details, our staff as well. Every one of our staff members is now all of a sudden put in the position of being responsible for 20 to 30 students in an emotionally stressful situation, and they may have their own past histories, their own emotional challenges that go along with any of these, whether it's fire, whether it's shooting, whether it's a bomb, whether it's an earthquake. And so remembering how important counseling support is. We have in our plan that when we evacuate, we'll set up a counseling center and we'll set up a first aid center. But it's just getting to that place, being aware and remembering where people are at. And we all know to be patient, we all know to be sensitive, but it's critical. And the last one, I think, relates a little bit to what and I thank you for your comments before, Michael, but I think a sensitive return to normalcy is critical. And it's a balance, right? On one hand, the quicker we can get back to normalcy, the better for everybody to kind of move on. At the same time, you have to do it in a way that's sensitive, because you can't just rush and forget just what happened, and you can't ignore it. So you have to find a way to move us. We have to find a way to move our staff and our students and our parents back to normalcy, at the same time being sensitive to everything they've been through. And that's not always easy. But it's really one of the reasons, and I want to be clear, if the police had said, hey, we need to close school on that day, and we felt more strongly there was something more credible, then we would have. But it seemed really important as well to get back to normalcy and not, we were very concerned that this would just keep happening over and over, which really has two impacts. It obviously impacts education because students aren't in school, but it also impacts people's emotions and state of mind, and that's not helpful either. It doesn't get them back to normalcy if we say we're not going to be here. And we're the leaders, and we need to be here, and we need to say we're going to be here. In my craziness of lack of sleep in the morning, coming in that morning, I remember thinking, I'm going to put this podium, like, we get that podium, I'm going to put it on the front, I'm going to sit there on my laptop, and if they, which obviously doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it is, I think we need to also make a stand and be sensitive to those who don't feel comfortable, who needed another day and needed to know everything was going to be okay. And that's, I think, how we do it. So those are some of the main lessons we've learned. In terms of next steps, a number of them we took immediately after the bomb threat, and some of them were in process. We have a messenger, so a communication system school messenger that we've been using. We're transitioning into Blackboard, and thank you to Tara and IT and Jackie Hamilton, and that is a much better system. We are able to, with essentially a single event or a single action, communicate via email, phone if we want. Phone doesn't work terribly well in these kind of situations, but email, text, post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook, and we're working out the kinks to post it on the website immediately. And so we were able to use it during during the bomb threat, which helped tremendously. We also learned in that process how to use it and how to use it a little better. We have already improved communications to teachers. By the second event, we were ready for, if we needed it, to be able to text to teachers. We revised our emergency dismissal procedures. I can go into detail on that. If you have a question, ask. I can talk about what looks different. Our parent and student and staff feedback has been gathered. We're still looking through it. We have a meeting scheduled with Keenan Associates to review our emergency operations plan, to get input from them as well. You want me to keep going, or you want to? Still to be done. We are looking into pre-authorizing emergency dismissal. So one of the things that would make this probably smoother would be if parents could say, we give the district permission in the event of emergency to release our student they can walk off campus. We can look at the list we have, say, boom, you're free to go, here's the pass, off you go. Which we're looking into whether it's legal, whether it's something we can't viable as well. The Blackboard system that we have still needs some staff contact information updated with it, particularly new staff, and that's happening. We need to formalize our backup personnel assignments. So as I mentioned, we're fine, generally speaking. It's if we have people who are sick, and on any given day we sometimes do, we often do, how do we deal with the backups? And I'd say as we look district-wide, we have a little bit easier time with that because we have the district office right here. Drake and Tam in particular, if I were advising them, is how do they deal with those challenges? Because it's going to be some time before somebody comes from here down to there, and I know that they've gone in the past, but it takes a little bit of time, obviously. And standardizing our protocols across the district. How can Drake and Tam and San Andreas and Tamascal learn from whatever we've learned? Because it certainly has been lots of learning over the last 3 years. But I feel like all of it's good. I cannot, last pieces I want to share are really just thank yous. And our site staff was incredible, like I said. The district staff was incredibly supportive all the way through. Our emergency responders, and Tara talked about it before, that relationship with law enforcement is critical. We're lucky at Redwood. The captain who's in charge of all of this was one of my students at Drake. Actually, to tie it in, the first year of integrated science, he was one of those first students. We come for a full circle, but really we have worked with them regularly over the years, both having an SRO and working with them closely, and it makes a huge difference in terms of pre-planning, and it makes a huge difference when you have the event because you're not spending tons of time having to communicate and figure each other out. You have a sense of how you communicate and how you know each other. Our students were unbelievable. A few dismissal issues aside, they really were, and really even then, this was not 1,900 students flying over a fence. It was far fewer, but they really were amazing. If you think about how long it is to be in a classroom, not knowing what's going on exactly, not knowing how much longer you're going to be there, they were tremendous, and have been their feedback has been useful, and they were great, whether they came or not last Friday or the Friday before with our shooting threat. They were incredibly positive and they were incredibly supportive of each other. Which makes a huge difference. And our parents have been fantastic. I can tell you, and I literally probably read through 1,000 to 1,500 emails in that couple weeks span from parents that came at each, because every time you send one out, more than one comes back. And so, and by and large, it literally isn't even close to 1% of the ones that I got that were, there were many suggestions, and that's great because that gives us input. There were so many positive, both in terms of feedback as well as just, hey, we support you, we really appreciate what you did. It was fascinating, and I hope we never have to go through it again, but if we do, hopefully we're better prepared, and we'll learn again. Anything else?
I think one thing I just wanted to add that David didn't mention that was important on the shooting threat day was, and Wes and I were there with his team, and as an admin team, we went around and made sure we touched base with every teacher, like face to face that morning. And it's things like that. Like I think it really helped us to come back together and say, okay, we had eyes on everybody, and here's who we need to follow up on, and here, I think that reassurance for them, but also just knowing like we're here for you, and also the information it provided us as a team was really, really crucial. So I think those are the kinds of things that David did really well. I think that were amazing and made this a much easier process than it could have been. Thank you.
Thank you. And one last thing before we open up to questions. I think one of the hardest things I've had to do so far as a principal was the Thursday afternoon after we'd gotten the shooting threat graffiti on the bathroom wall, and we called the staff together in the library and to basically tell them, here's the deal, here's what we found, and we're going to have school. And you could see and this is again a week after we'd had a bomb threat, and I had no idea really what would happen the next day and whether lots of them would come, lots of them wouldn't. We wanted to be respectful. If people didn't feel comfortable, we weren't going to sit and pull teeth. And we only really, I think, had 3 staff that didn't come the next day, and I know at least 2 of them I think it's better for them and their kids that they were home, given what their past is. So my hat's off to the tremendous job, again, that they didn't sign up to do, but did, and did more than admirably. So, thank you. Questions?
Before I open it up to questions, I'd like to lead a round of applause for these two at the podium. Thank you very much. Well done. I wish we had a bigger crowd to give you all the kudos that you deserve. It's very impressive, and I hope we don't have to do it again. Anybody have any questions for these two?
Comment, I want to thank you, David. And just this presentation alone, makes me proud to be associated with this district. Your willingness to look at what was done right, what was done wrong, the amount of reflection that's gone into it, the thought is, overwhelms me. And, thank you. I think that we ought to, in light of this, we ought to look at our disaster plan, which is very flawed in a lot of ways. And I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from this that can apply to our disaster plan.
Yes.
Okay, I see Michael
Just
leaning
one
in
Yeah,
first.
well, one comment that you haven't mentioned is that there was an arrest of a suspect with respect to, who made the bomb threat.
Right.
And there was a decision, and that arrest was, actually, I think that was being discussed, if I'm not mistaken, in part on the day of the shooting threat, as if he didn't have anything else to do.
Right.
And a decision, well, as it turned out, the arrest was made on campus, right, where the student was taken from class. Right. And that was a choice that was made, right, in connection with law enforcement.
Yes, so because the day wasn't complicated enough, they felt like they were clear enough and had enough information they had needed to question the student and some others, and did that day, and then felt like they had enough to arrest the student as well. And so, in the midst of all that, it's worth knowing when we do a student arrest, we do everything we can to protect the confidentiality of the student, and even when they're escorted off campus, to keep the halls clear and the area clear, so again, student confidentiality is kept. So in the midst of all the rest of it, we certainly had plenty of police that day, which made it a little bit easier, but
And more complicated at the same time.
and exactly, we had kind of multiple things going on at once.
Well, we were also clearing hallways, and on a day where there had been a shooting threat, clearing hallways, which heightened the awareness of people in their classroom. It was sort of a nuanced dance we were trying to do to keep people's agitation level down as we were clearing hallways and removing kids and trying to keep rumor down that if anyone saw this particular student, that, the immediate thing was we're under a shooting threat. So it was it was a little bit of who's on first at times that day.
And it was also an example why that communication system is useful. So we could do what we did, even though, for instance, a class or two that was about to get out tried to get out of the room. We said, hold on a couple minutes while we were taking care of the arrest. We were able to communicate as soon as, because that, of course, got everybody, started to get a few people going, and we were able to put a communication out and say, hey, everything's okay, everything's normal, et cetera, and that helped. But yes, it was an active day.
Other questions?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So is San Andreas on the same campus as Redwood?
So it's on the same physical property, and so when and if I'm going to anticipate your question a little bit, when we have these situations, we communicate with San Andreas, we communicate with the district office, and we communicate with Tamascal as well, even though they're a little bit more detached. So they're aware, and the folks in Carlisle building. So they're aware, and depending on the situation, depends on their response too, and what exactly it might be. So it can be very different. A fire, a lockdown, a shelter in place, each of them has their own. But yeah, so we contacted David Luongo, Corbett Elson, et cetera.
Yeah, it was pretty quiet that day. Just a normal day.
Right.
It's pretty
And we were, we had about 50 or 60% of our normal attendance.
Yeah.
that day too, which helps keep it quiet.
Other questions?
Have a comment?
Yeah.
I will tell you, first of all, thank you, because I thought of you the very first, oh my God, the burden of it as a leader, because it's the 9/11, what do you do? It's the dispositions question. It's the habits of mind question. What do you do when you don't know what to do? Because that's what 9/11 was about for all of us who remember that. Showing up and working together to a resolution. And the burden of it for all of you, I thank you for it. I'm also concerned for all of you to sustain this kind of stress. You're the ones that are going door to door in the classrooms, and you have no protection on. I mean, I know the elements of these particular circumstances, but my concern is for you guys. I hope that we have some kind of HR, some process that cares for all of you, because this kind of thing can build up and it can take one little thing and then it's too much. So I hope that you have, at least internally amongst yourselves, check-ins with each other so that you can support each other, because you're bearing a lot of stress for everybody, and I'm concerned for you guys.
Well, thank you.
But thank you. Thank you.
And know that it is what helps having a team that you can collaborate with effectively. It makes a huge difference. You need to know there was a calm in a sense, knowing that the police knew what they were doing, knowing that we had folks around us who knew what they were doing, knowing that we had staff who was going to do the right thing. It makes it much easier to some. And you're also right that the stress comes out later. Right? It comes out when you get home and when you can let go a little bit. But there is, and our HR department's been great.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
In terms of no, hey, do you need help? Do you need support?
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions just to close up. You talked about having standardized protocols across the district, and I think that's a great idea. I don't know if what happened at Redwood can be replicated at our other 4 sites, but I'm also wondering if other school districts contacted the district, or you, David, said, okay, what did you learn? Can you share with us? I hope it doesn't happen at our campus, but I'm hoping that if something like this happened at a different school district, that we would feel comfortable tapping into what other people have learned.
So actually, the county MCOE has, Marin County Office of Education has a school law enforcement partnership, and they've asked us to speak next week at that next meeting to do exactly that, which is a common use for that group. And so we'll be sharing that, whether it's that meeting or the next meeting, I'm not sure yet, but we'll be sharing those learnings as well as they have done with us.
Okay. And my second question is about templates for messaging. This is my first year as a non-active TAM union parent, and so I didn't get all those messages, but the superintendent shared with us what was going to be sent out, but I didn't have, I wasn't Johnny on the spot this time. But I'm wondering if in that binder we have messages that, we can just plug in details so it's not as complicated for whomever is trying to construct something to drive the message accurately without too much thought.
Yes, I think one of the lessons learned over the last couple of years, unfortunate events that have occurred, is we have started a shared Google folder. We also have them in hard copy, and it's literally called Communications to the Community. And there are all different templates for different types of events that are exactly that. They're sort of the bones of the message that you can plug details into. We don't do our best thinking when we have a heightened level of anxiety or emotion, and so having the structure ready to go, and as David alluded to, it's also, even just from the 3 years ago, it's a different process. We had a tour on campus the morning of the bomb threat, and we were in David's office. It was like the clock this big ticking in the corner, because we knew we had to make a decision before that tour set off out of the library. We also knew that the minute we sent that tour home, that, you know, the Twitter sphere, whatever, is going to be exploded. So we, you know, now it's also a very strict coordination of communication. And it was literally, we timed it out in minutes. Like, Wes and I are going to go to the library. 2 minutes later, David's going to send the email to the staff. 3 minutes after that, he's going to send the communication to the parent. Like, we literally
It had to
have
be
to be that
choreographed.
structured around your communication and when you're going to do it, so that you can control the message. Because once it's out, you know. And I was getting text messages from people in other districts before David had hit send to the parents here, because we had dismissed the tour. So all of the 8th graders were sending information. So it's really helpful to have all those things. And I will tell you that what other districts have asked me for is that.
Mhm.
They've asked if we'd be willing to share our communication templates with them. I will say, I think this county is very collaborative. You know, we share a lot of resources. We go to a lot of meetings at MCOE, and I'm grateful for that, because I think it's a nice feeling.
And I think the other piece is being ready for the moment. So it's as an administrator having, I mean, I have the next lockdown message on my phone ready to hit send. I can adjust the details if I need to, but it's there, it's ready. Teachers have their emergency packets ready. They know what to do. They've looked through them. It's that kind of stuff that makes it so that you can really focus on the real challenges that happen during that time that you can't anticipate, or that you have to figure out, or that make it hard because of the emotions that come into play. So it's incredibly helpful.
I don't know if you heard, I shared at the last board meeting that the bomb threat situation, I was sitting in Dr. Yoshiara's office, and I heard he put you on speakerphone. I was just a fly on the wall, but I was so impressed with how the decisions were being made, and yeah, I just feel so grateful that we have that caliber of decision-making going on all the time. The last question I had is relevant for what's happening right now in our counties to the north. I know that Terra Linda High School was an evacuation site on, was it just last night? And I'm wondering if and when we would be considered as an evacuation site for something like wildfires, and what happens when there's school in session. You know, what have we gone through that scenario?
You know, I think David can speak to this, because he had a series of phone calls with MCOE. You know, usually when they do that, it's the gymnasium that they're using. So, you know, theoretically, most of the school could continue to be conducted, but, you know, it's obviously a last case scenario. On the other side, schools have, you know, a school gymnasium has size, it has showers, it has, you know, toilets, it has all of the necessary things that you would need for a site. It can support a lot of people in that way. So in that way, they are sort of well set up for that. Yeah, but obviously it would cause a disruption. Usually the decision is, you know, what's the greater need?
In these situations, and the ones that Principal Sondheim talked about, are very fluid. They happen very quickly. You know, was it yesterday, as these events were unfolding in Napa and Sonoma counties, Dr. Topia was also on a conference call with MCOE as we listened in on what Office Emergency Services was doing. And at that time, I had asked the question around the Civic Center, which was being used. Did they foresee additional sites being needed? And I don't know if it was Dr. Willis or somebody responding, and I remember quite vividly, Dr. Tobia may add in as well, that they felt that was more than enough space, that it can handle 2,000 people, and we would be good, sort of, thank you. And that was at 2:30 in the afternoon as this was occurring. At 3:30, Mary Jane calls and lets us know that they wanted to consider Tam High School as an additional evacuation site. So she said she'll talk with OES and keep us posted. So it just speaks to the speed at which this occurs. And so I let, again, Cabinet know and facilities know. And at 4:30, she calls back and says they decided Terra Linda would be the site because of whatever reasons, proximity and other things. So while we do plan to this some extent, it happens quickly, right? When thousands of people come into a situation, when there's sort of 2,000 people sitting on a field waiting to they happen quickly. And to the extent that we can prepare this ahead of time, we certainly do, although we don't always have that luxury. Fires come through a community very quickly. Earthquakes will happen within seconds. So we do have a very good network. As the principal reaches out, as Dr. Topia reaches out, I immediately call, Mary Jane early. I call board president early, then send something out to all the superintendents. I send something out to all the chiefs, including, Central Marin, Mill Valley, San Anselmo, Fairfax, for all of that, as well as, particularly with the schools that are closest to us. Larkspur, I don't think any of you have middle school kids, was very involved in a lot of these situations and was asking, much as terms of down to the minutes, was asking as soon as we'd send something out, let them know, because they need to send something out to their parents. But they don't want to get ahead of us to sending out to their parents, obviously, because that creates sort of an awkward situation. So all of this happens quickly, a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration for that to occur.
Well, I think I'm the only person that hasn't said anything, and I really don't have anything to say other than thank you, and really, really appreciate it, and kind of echoing or building upon what Dr. Yoshihara just said, and I guess the other board members, that you can plan just so much, but then it comes down to having people with discernment and common sense and all the qualities that our district administrators have. That really gets us across the finish line in a safe way. So thank you very, very much.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a public comment now. Is there anyone who has public comment?
Was it your tour, Sue?
Yeah, they said, oh, I said, what are you doing? And they said, we want to see you. And I said, oh, to the tour. I must be in trouble.
Well, thank you.
They let me finish my little spiel and told me we had to go.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, funny.
So this next item, item D, is to approve a variable term waiver for the TAM Wellness Coordinator, Ms. Wright. Mr. Christensen was unable to join us because he's up in Napa helping his neighbors. So Dr. Yoshihara is stepping in.
I will do my best. Yes, and our thoughts are certainly with Mr. Christensen, as this has impacted him very closely. So we appreciate the board's indulgence on some of these items. So this one here is a variable term waiver. As you know, our desire to fill the TAM High School Wellness Coordinator position. This is a variable term waiver. As it states, it demonstrates our ability to try to fill the position and lists the efforts of which we have done so or tried to do so. And this person needs the PPS, of which they're working on, and allows us to employ them while they complete this requirement for the credentials to be, essentially a counseling position for this. Is that fairly accurate, Dr. Topia? So I'll answer questions. Otherwise, I would ask that the board approve this waiver as stated on the agenda.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, I don't.
We're all good? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? No. Great. Okay, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the variable term waiver request for TAM High School Wellness Coordinator Hannah Wright.
So moved.
There's a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have 2 student trustees left for a preferential vote. All those in favor say aye. Okay. Adults, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
That motion carried. We are skipping items, we're tabling items E and F per
Yes.
the conversation previously. So now we're on to item G, the facilities update, which was supposed to be Mr. Christensen, and you're on deck again.
I am. I don't Mayor, I don't think there's a PowerPoint for this. I just want to make sure, right? Okay, so I am going to share that. This was basically an opportunity for the district to share with the board the work being done to address the continued enrollment growth. So I will briefly update what I know as it relates to the work being done. We had conversation on this last week around the progress being made, and what I shared is that while we certainly will work on refining our staffing numbers and our enrollment numbers, both Dr. Topier and Mr. Minion's office is working on getting the most recent numbers coming out of our middle schools for us to project outward, as well as looking at staffing for 18-19 going forward. I did instruct that for the time being we need to move forward with the numbers that we've had, at the time of adopted budget. So just to recap, at our schools, Drake has the least in terms of additional facility needs. We're looking at somewhere between 1 and possibly 2 modular units or portables to be placed at the site. Redwood has the most. I want to say it's between 10 and 12 portable units, close to in proximity where the current ones are located, where there are 3 now. I'll come back to the bathrooms in a minute. And then TAM has, I think, the addition of 6, something in that range, 6 to 8, 6, you're thinking? 6 additional portable units to be placed at some location on the campus. Again, we are looking at the location in closest proximity to where the 2 are currently located near the theater. At Redwood, we also need additional restroom units. We are looking at these as permanent structures because this is a long-term need for Redwood High School. This was something that was brought to our attention at least last year, if not before then. So we've begun work to put one of them adjacent to the permanent 2-story structure, and then the second unit, which we will bring forward as a change order in proximity to the current 3 portables that are placed on the backside. As we bring in more, that only increases the need for a restroom, and I believe by law you'll be required when you hit some number of students. Tying into that for TAM, as the board is well aware, the impact on parking. We had met with the city of Mill Valley and the supervisor's office a couple weeks ago, I want to say, with a follow-up meeting in an area where we're looking at that is further down on the campus. Down is relative. What would it be? It's near the fields. There's an area over there that's a potential to increase parking. I shared this with the board, but here publicly, it involves some tear down and some construction as it relates to paving and surfacing on that. We have a rough estimate of around $600,000 for this location for about 77 spaces, I want to say. The access point for this is the same as the current access point, which is on El Monte, El Monte Boulevard. It obviously would just increase the amount of cars coming on and off. It's currently utilized by some cars there now. Any of you who attended the TAM High promotion know where I'm talking about, because it's the entry point to where the graduation was last year of the field. And that area there would be expanded. There's an old structure there that would be potentially removed, although in the latest I heard it may not. But that's the location for it. And we're working on that as a possible augmentation to parking. We share that with the City of Mill Valley and Supervisor Sears' office. The other area that I know Mr. Christensen was working on is up on Sycamore Avenue. There's a church there, and I forget the name of the church. United Methodist, thank you. Which I had mentioned at one point, only for some odd circumstance that I was there, as let's explore this as a possible location. As many places with churches, they obviously have, like schools, certain areas when they're busy and have impact on the parking lots, and other times are largely underutilized. And so I know Mr. Christensen has met with staff over there, and the preliminary information I have is that they were open to allowing us a rental of that facility at a very low cost. I want to say under $10,000 for the year is what I heard. for around 70-something spaces as well. I want to say 75, but don't quote me on that. Starting next fall for the period of the school year. So these are some developments as they relate to facilities that we believe are opportunistic for us to take advantage of and develop good relationships with our community partners on this. And we certainly will work with Mill Valley in terms of the impact that this would have for traffic flow on our community. Those are the ones I'm aware of. As it relates to facilities, certainly we are working as well on finishing up the air conditioning at Drake High School over the library wing. I don't know if it's just the library, but library wing. That's also in process. And we will have the RFQ went out to the for the proposal last time as relates to energy savings and the grants and rebates that are afforded to that. That RFQ is being finalized and should go out if it hasn't already, and that will bring us some more additional resources, short of sort of some capital campaign. But these are all things that we can do without needing that sort of measure. And we are looking very closely at staffing and what our needs will be. I think that's what I know that Mr. Christensen had on his mind. I'd be happy to answer questions and/or refer them to Mr. Christensen when he gets back.
Yes.
Michael. Yes.
TAM, parking. I was interviewed by a student on the TAM News, so this is it's front and center. The 6 additional portables that you talked about would presumably take up some or all of the parking, the upper parking lot?
Near the
spaces?
theater, yes.
Right. So I'm just wondering in terms of numbers of spots, right? You've talked about adding maybe another 150, right?
Right.
So how many spots what would be our net gain in terms of parking spots if we include the church and the, and what you said was the additional spots
Sure.
down off of, I'm not exactly where they are, I guess next to the tennis courts, maybe?
They're closer to the football stadium.
Okay.
The number I heard in terms of lost spots at the theater areas, I heard between 28 and 33.
Okay.
And whether that's all of it, I don't know, but certainly that is a good chunk of it. But 28 to 33.
I thought, and I talked to Lars offline, and
Yeah.
he said the church parking was more like 35. I thought, not 75.
We can double check on that.
Yeah. So the net would be 70-something. Any
Okay.
other questions for Dr. Y?
I'll put that down for net parking.
I see one coming from Barbara.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
I think I may have misheard you, but did you say 2 levels of parking for TAM?
No, this is a single level parking. Essentially, it's resurfacing. It's onto El Monte Boulevard. It's an existing parking area already. Just it would be upgraded, striped, so forth.
How much is left in the budget for Phase 1?
We'll have to check. We moved $3 million over, I know, for all of Phase 1, and we spent $600,000. Does that sound in the ballpark? So I would rough math, 2.4-ish million.
So we have some for that line item that could go towards this parking lot or repaving the church.
We have some, although in reality, that's something we have to look at in terms of does that have to be added. That's why it's important for us to determine for staffing and how many portables we'll bring in, because that will determine whether the 2.4 is adequate or not.
Okay. Any other questions? Public comment on this? Nope. Okay, thank you, Dr. Y. And now we're on to the resolution. This is resolution number 17.5, opposing youth access to marijuana. We're keeping you busy tonight.
Not a problem. So I'll give a little bit of background. This was a request for the board to consider as it relates to our district. I know a number of our municipalities and county office have worked on this, and I had reached out to my counterparts in terms of any background that they had on it, and brought some information forward here tonight. And the resolution is what you see there. I do want to give thanks to San Diego Union High School District, of where this is largely modeled upon. I got 2 samples on this from somewhere. Someone, I think the supervisor's office made, but someone gave me some models, and I felt this one was nicely written, and then I adapted it for us. I do want to share that President Anderson and I got some feedback from Councilmember Wright from San Anselmo?
Yes.
San Anselmo, for some feedback. So I thought they were right on. There's some slight language suggestions on the resolution, and I'm happy to share that, President Anderson, that's okay?
Yes, please.
It has to do with the section, I think at the very end, the now therefore be it resolved section on mine it's on page 2. Just some language, and I'll emphasize it by just reading it. Now therefore be it resolved that the Tamalpais Union High School District supports the decrease in our youth's access of marijuana through restrictions on, so I think that's an added, marijuana storefronts and commercial cultivation, striking out which will, and then replacing it with in order to decrease marijuana use by adolescents and the negative consequences to the health and safety that would follow. So those are the verbiage suggestions, and I'll be happy to read that again. But again, President Anderson and I saw that, so I share that with all of you tonight. And that's the only feedback I've received thus far around that. Some of the superintendents gave me some letters. Reed Union School District issued a letter, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to the community, and Mill Valley also issued a letter. I asked the superintendents about, did they consider a resolution? I don't remember specifically, but they said that they felt the letter basically stated what they would do in a resolution. So they had letters that they shared with me. And I thought Lagunitas had a resolution. So that's the background I have on this. This is really the board's item and my request to reach out. So I'm happy to answer questions or take direction on this resolution.
Questions, comments?
Well, I think it's a good idea for us to take a position on this. This is going to be, this kind of issue is being addressed by municipalities sort of as we speak, in light of the passage of proposition, whatever it was. And it's obviously, and for those of us, last year at that Marin Community United meeting, we had the county director of
Matt
health.
Willis.
I forget what his
Matt
name
Willis,
is.
Dr. Matt Willis.
Matt Willis, and it was, for those of you who were there, he had this chart. It was sort of, where Marin County ranks in terms of, health indicators, ranks at the top of counties in California, except when you get to substance abuse.
Right.
And then I'm motioning high just to indicate use, but really we're at the bottom, And so I think it's important that we do address this, and that we get ahead of it, because it's becoming it's been an important issue, but with the legalization initiative, it's a more important issue. I do have a suggestion with respect, a small suggestion with respect to the language, David, in
Sure.
that same paragraph, the
Okay.
now therefore paragraph. I would say, instead of supports the decrease in our youth's access, I would say supports reducing our youth's access
Okay.
to marijuana. So-
Okay.
So you
Yeah,
would
that-
replace the words "the decrease in" with the word "reducing."
Sure, I got that down. Thank
And
you.
I would say access to marijuana, but,
Yeah, I got that.
okay.
That's good. Any other suggestions, comments, ideas? Students, any input on this one?
You're on camera.
No comment?
I guess this is just for of like a political view of what's going on? Like, why is this?
It's a good question. The board takes resolution from time to time on various items that could have political ramifications, but I think it's more about viewpoints that support the district's goals. And this one here, I think, if you remember the 3 goals, while you could certainly argue all of them, certainly around wellness and well-being is one that this district has worked very hard on, and it shows up again and again, and from our LCAP to board goals to governance goals to my goals. And I think the impact of marijuana on adolescent brain development, from all the stuff that I've heard and has been shared, has been detrimental. And so while we're not going to get into sort of the adult matters, on adolescent brain development, there's some concern around that. And having those in proximity to our youth, I think, is what we're looking at. And question says, well, I've had a few people ask, well, how are you doing that? How are you limiting youth to this? And so I've shared things that we can do in terms of education. We control the education of our youth. So things that are shared by our teachers to our youth, things that, as we work with law enforcement, to our youth. Again, while there are laws around this for adults, it isn't allowable for youth. And that's where I think the board is looking at in this particular resolution. They can certainly add.
Also, wasn't this, this discussion in part coming out of Mill Valley City concerns about licensing in Mill Valley?
Most recently, I think it came out of Larkspur, most recently. Mill Valley had some stuff before, maybe about a year ago, which you may be thinking. We did deal with some stuff with some businesses in Mill Valley. I think that they were going through at that time, yes.
Oh, okay.
But I think we've been hearing from Mill Valley Aware and the Twin Cities Coalition for Healthy Youth and the Ross Valley Healthy Kids Collaborative that this is something they support too. You had a question, B, or you looked like you were approaching the mic.
This is basically just like, yeah, I understand it.
This is our stance, yeah.
Right, it's just a stance, it's not an action.
No.
Right.
Okay, this is time for public comment. I see a very patient gentleman back there waiting. Do you need a timekeeper? 3-minute? Tara, could we?
I'll be efficient.
Okay.
Yeah,
Could
I
you
want to
state your
support Don
state your
Carney, YMCA Youth Court. I love it. Pass it. It'll keep the kids safe. One thing you should know, in the professional field, you try and limit access and increase the perception of harm. Legalizing it has decreased the perception of harm, and the increased potency of THC is going through the roof. It's a perfect storm for dysfunction for young people. I see that every day in the youth court. So I commend you on doing this. All the municipalities have to make a decision quickly, or the state's going to come in and will be bound by the state's decision. So that's why this is very important for all the municipalities. There are a couple of council people in San Anselmo who think it'd be a good idea to put pot shops in the empty storefronts in San Anselmo. I'm part of the coalition there. We think that would be disastrous and decrease the perception of harm for young people. So I encourage you to pass it. And also, the Marin County Youth Court, in the spirit of equity, has decided to drop our entire fee for young people referred to the youth court from any school district in the county. We want to protect the children as much as possible, and we don't want fees to get in the way of that protection.
Thank you. Okay, great. Well, is there any further discussion?
I think I just want to make one comment. It is very gratifying because for the last couple of years we've had various health coalitions, and as you know, I've been involved with Mill Valley Aware, and to see us all starting to work together and really be on the same page and trying to take more of a leadership role. I really appreciate everybody's input, and thank you, Mr. Carney, for that good news about the youth court. It's terrific news. I had the opportunity to visit once, and I was very impressed. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to put a positive spin on the second whereas. I think it is gratifying that tobacco use has gone down as much as it has over the last 20 years. And I think we can do the same for other things.
Okay, I'm looking at the clock. It's 2 minutes to 9. So I am thinking it would be great if we had a motion to approve this resolution with the changes noted.
I have them down, yes. I'll share that with Mary.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this resolution?
I move we approve resolution number 17.5, or is that 17 and a half? Opposing youth access to marijuana through marijuana storefronts and commercial cultivation with the noted changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Preferential vote from you stalwart student trustees.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, roll
Aye.
call. Sorry. Yep.
Aye.
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 Aye. That resolution passed. Thank you.
For being a leader in this one. I know Tam District is not afraid to go first. I remember you guys were the first to move your elections. And everybody followed. So we will see if all our neighboring districts will follow with a resolution. But
Okay, you've got 60 seconds to go through the rest of the
I will go through them quickly. Yes.
board policies.
BP 0100 has brought back for you tonight. Thank you to Trustee Owens for helping with this. Her changes should be reflected in here. And we also reached out to our union leadership and student leaderships for their input. So that's all incorporated here tonight. Unless there's any questions, I would ask that the board approve this item. Normally it would be under consent, but because we had some specific requests, we put it here.
Okay, so this is a second reading, so we need to approve it now?
Yeah, I don't plan to bring it back because the changes were relatively small. If it was
Okay.
more, I would bring it back for a third.
Any other questions on this? Thank you, Barbara, for your help on this.
Thank you, Barbara.
Public comment? Do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt BP 0100.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Preferential vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Adults, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, good.
All
Item
right.
J.
J is first reading, so unless there's any questions, I'm not gonna. So these are related to the evaluation superintendent. As always, you can follow up. I'll bring back all of these for second read next time.
This was just brought to you by CSBA?
Correct. All of these are CSBA, unless otherwise noted. We're just going through board policy. You'll get a lot of them just because many of them are quite old.
Okay. Any other questions on J? Okay, how about K?
Same thing. This is administrative reg 411.2 regarding certification. Let me get my folder ready. I can answer questions if you have them. Otherwise,
Does anyone have any questions on K, L, and
there you go.
M?
Efficiency.
I think we talked about, I can't really do that, but I'm.
But she's
so
going to.
K, so, okay, K. Any questions on K?
I'm sorry.
No? Okay. How about L? This is the BP and AR 4112.61 employment references.
Admin's replacing the BP, and it'll come back next
That
time.
one's being eliminated, the BP.
Correct.
Yep.
Very good.
Any questions on L?
No?
Okay.
Get the gavel.
M, first reading of board policy NAR 5127 graduation activities.
Yep. Removing all Casey references. Obviously, that's
Casey.
bygone. Yep.
17 years old. Time to be revamped. Okay, thank you.
All
And we
right.
pulled two, 17B and C. B is the purchase orders, over 7,500. This was pulled by
Me.
Chuck.
Yeah, I had questions about the one-on-one aids. If I can pull it up. Why are we contracting out one-on-one aids?
That's a good question. I had it and I didn't.
Which item is that?
I don't know which one you're specifically referring to, but it might depend depending on what the need of the student is. So for example,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
sorry,
It's
it-
Heart of Humanity It's
Oh,
items
yeah,
6
hard-
and 7.
Yeah, there it is. hard for me
Yeah,
to
from
do
that,
this.
I can't tell you what the need is, but normally when we farm out for a one-on-one, it's because there's a very specific need for the student, such as sign language or something like that.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Would someone like to make any public comment? No. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the purchase orders over $7,500?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Okay, Chuck, second. Preferential vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adults, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that was unanimous. 17C, ratify the vendor warrants.
That was just the apple?
Yeah, I don't know where it is in there, but I think Mary caught this, that there may have been an Apple warrant.
If there was, I missed it, but also there was.
Oh.
Quickly abstained.
Okay, so, would someone like to make a motion to ratify the vendor warrants as listed? You can just, anyone want to make the motion?
I move we ratify the vendor warrants as listed.
Second.
Preferential vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adults, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions up here?
Yes, there is.
Did you get that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourn.